on rates. Instead, they voted on plan redesign. The one change that they made, which was a significant one, was to remove GLP-1s from what they are offering, which will necessarily lower this number. This is at the high end of the projection, and it's one that will come down over time as we get better information, as they vote on their final plan, and then as we match it up against our census, which employees are taking which plans. That's something that I know last year it was provided closer to May 1st, and I would anticipate the same. But as GIC sets their final rates, we will also come back to you to refine these numbers and give everyone a better sense of where we are. Debt service is $7.6 million, which is up 2%. Pension is $6.7 million, up 4.1%, and state assessments drop down almost 18%, primarily due to the reduction in the charter school assessments. A couple things I'd like to note is that indirect costs are funded through water and sewer user charges and reimbursed to the general fund to offset overhead that supports those operations. And then the solid waste line is shown is a subsidy. The total fund right now, I think it's about $180,000. Is that right, in the revenue from the bags? And the rest is the subsidy. So moving on to the next slide. So the revenue overview, a few key points that I wanted to highlight as folks take a look at this slide. The budget was developed consistent with the direction that we had discussed last fall to use conservative revenue estimates per the fiscal policy and to use excess levy capacity where needed rather than rely on aggressive assumptions. We were looking at level service in this first recommended budget, and we're open to feedback both tonight and going forward anywhere that you think we should be taking a harder look at numbers or figuring out ways that we could manage differently. We're proposing to use $2.8 million of excess levy capacity to balance the budget to meet the fiscal policy. That leaves an estimated $1.6 million in remaining excess capacity, something I'll address more when we get to the compliance summary at the end. On state aid, we budgeted based on the governor's budget, as I mentioned, which reflects a nearly 2.4% increase, 2.9% growth in Chapter 70 funding, and a 2.5% growth in the unrestricted government aid, which goes to our government administration. Local receipts are projected using our financial policy standard, no more than 90% of prior year actuals, and the slight decrease you see reflects that discipline that we've applied to this presentation. On the expenditure overview, I want to highlight a couple of things again. The single largest pressure we have this year is health insurance. We've budgeted 14.5% increase, which is approximately $1.18 million. I do anticipate that will come down, but to plan conservatively, Patrick and I, as we talked about this, did not want to be in a situation where it ended up being on the higher end, and we told you something tonight that was not reflective of what we could accurately forecast, or that we would be coming back in a few weeks saying, there's a crushing number that's come out from GIC. We see this as an opportunity to dial back down, reduce excess levy use, or allow for any other changes that may develop over time. Did you have something to add, Patrick? Okay, I didn't know if you... So they've not yet been voted on by the GIC, as I mentioned, but we will continue at each select board meeting as we have information. We will update it and be working closely with FinCom as well as these numbers become better refined. The budget fully funds the town's pension obligation in accordance with the approved funding schedule that's gone before PIRAC and has been voted on by the retirement board. The pension appropriation remains on track to address its unfunded liability ahead of the schedule set by law, though. On solid waste, we've increased the budget to a holding number of 15% in anticipation of additional contract costs. Our current contract is up for renewal, and neighboring communities have seen significant increases, and so again, it's something where we want to try to reflect as best we can where we think we may end up, with a hope and anticipation that we'll do everything we can to lower that number as we move closer to the final budget that goes before town meeting. Our goal there, both with GIC and with trash, is to conservatively estimate and manage risk where we can, so we don't give a rosy picture tonight that is not reflective of where we may end up. Continuing on expenditures, the capital improvement program is consistent again with our policy target of funding capital at approximately 10% of the operating budget, and the debt and service increases by 2% from FY26. Looking at the operating budgets, the town budget increases 7.7% or $3.2 million. That's inclusive of the solid waste subsidy and enterprise fund indirect costs. The school department budget increases 3.96% or approximately $1.35 million. Non-appropriated expenses, state assessments, and the overlay reserve are budgeted separately and not included in the appropriation totals. Patrick, do you want to speak to the school department number?
Yes. So in the line item budget proposal before you, the school department general fund appropriation is increasing, I think, 4.6% in the budget book. Last year, the school department budget was supplemented with $200,000 from free cash for utility reserve, and that's non-recurring. So there's a little bit of a just difference there because we're not accounting for that funding source this year.
So we just wanted to highlight that. That was something that, as we started to circulate things,
yeah.
was a question that we received. Do you have a question, Doug?
Yeah, I'm sorry, that didn't quite help me understand it, because the percentage shows up differently in different places. That's what you're getting at. I
Yes,
guess.
yep.
This 3.96 versus the 4.6, I saw it as 4 someplace. But that's the explanation?
So last year's general fund appropriation plus the utility reserve compared to this year's general fund appropriation is a 3.96% increase. If you take that $200,000 of one-time money away, it's 4.6.
That 200,000 moves it that much?
Yep.
And so it's really looking at overall spend last year compared to overall spend this year.
Exactly.
Patrick, do you have a microphone? I just can't see it. Oh, okay, great.
This little guy.
Just wanted to make sure folks at home could hear you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving to the operating budget, and we're obviously happy to stop for questions if you have them. I'd love to be able to get through this and then answer them, but happy to stop if folks have questions as we go.
Wait, doesn't that school number also include the Essex number in there besides?
Not the number on the slide that was just up, no.
So the school department budget that they present, when in the line items, Essex is there, but it's separate and apart from the budget that's presented to the school committee by the superintendent. So what I'm calling out here is just what was presented by the superintendent to the school committee. Does that answer your question for now?
For now.
Okay. So on the operating budget, just looking at the distribution of increase, I thought it's something that's useful to consider. These slides are very small for me. I need my readers here. I can't believe how far away this is.
Want me to pull it closer?
No. It's just funny that I look up at it and I can't see it. Of the total increase, the school department accounts for 33.7% of the increase. Health insurance represents 29.5% of the increase, and town departments together, when rolled up, are 27.7%. Solid waste represents 6%. When you look within town departments, that's another thing that's just a useful sort of quick view of what's going on. Public safety is the largest contributor with an increase of 16.9%, and that is reflective of the fact that it's 2 years with a settled contract. It's 2 years of COLAs and everything else all rolled into a single year of expense. So it's nearly 17% of the increase, but it's only 11.6% of the budget. General government is 8.8% of the increase. That's carrying salary reserves as well as added staff and full-time conversions that we've had over the last year. And then DPW, facilities, library, and community services represent, a small fraction of the overall increases, as you can see here. A contextual note on why department budgets look higher than in prior years. Many departments are reflecting compounding impacts of recently settled collective agreements, and in some cases that means the equivalent of 2 years of COLAs, as I just mentioned, landing in a single budget cycle. And so when we look at what contracts are left, we have fire and library, and then DPW, which expires at the end of FY26, and clerical, which will be up again in FY27. This budget makes several deliberate personnel adjustments. The net FTE impact is a reduction of 1.5 FTEs from FY26, generating approximately $82,000 in savings. The total budgetary impact of all personnel changes, new positions, restructured roles, and salary adjustments is approximately $693,000, as is called out here, exclusive of the end of employment costs and salary reserve, which we keep in a separate part of the budget. The key drivers here include the ratification of the police CBA, covering 2 years, adjustment to public safety overtime based on historical trends, and a number of staffing restructurings throughout the year. The taxpayer impact of all those personnel adjustments is estimated at approximately $153 per year for the average homeowner. I do want to just call out the public safety overtime based on historical trends. In the budget detail, you can see that we are raising the number that is recommended for the overtime line in both police and fire, because the 5-year historical averages are significantly above what we have been budgeting. And so we've been really using free cash for an operating expense, using one-time funds for an operating expense, which is something that, Patrick and I are putting this together, but you all have heard from me previously, is not something that is a great practice and something that I would like to, unless it's recommended here for the first time. Do you have an idea of what the total transfers are, just so folks can get a sense of how big those transfers are in overtime?
So between both police and fire, over the last 5 years, we've averaged almost $222,000 a year in supplemental transfers into their departmental budgets to cover overtime.
Every year for
Every
5
year.
year?
Yep,
Come on, police fire.
yep.
So $250,000 every
So at
year.
what point are we gonna talk about the philosophy behind that?
Yeah.
Is
Behind
there a
over,
At the end,
Is there a
or?
detail slide for overtime, or?
no, I think there's the police departmental and fire departmental, so
Oh, let's go.
we can talk about it right now if you'd like.
Why don't we
Or-
talk about it when we get to their department?
Great,
That just gives the
I'm
context.
good with that.
Okay.
Just one at a time.
okay.
Don't
And
slow down yet, Nick.
Keep going, Nick.
I'm rushing through as I am.
If you pause, you might never get back on track.
Come on, Doug, give me a little credit here. So going into departmental detail, great segue, Chair Phelan. We'll start with administration and finance. It increases 9.5% to 4.28 million. So I'll go through some of the drivers for each of these. And then, as the chair mentioned, this is a great time for us to talk about any particular department and ask questions specifically. And Patrick and I will do our best to answer them now, and if not, we'll get you the information. So on administration and finance, property and casualty insurance, per our broker, we are budgeting a 9% increase, which is approximately $93,000. That's consistent with market trends. It's property and liability. It's not simply that we have a building, whether it's vacant or not vacant, or what, it's liability for police, fire, employees, everyone else. It covers the full package. I don't know if there's anything that you want to add.
Nope,
Okay.
covered it.
The way you were looking at me, I thought you might. It also reflects staffing changes across the TA's office, accounting, assessing, treasury, and the clerk's office, adding up to approximately 56,000. Assessing, we're still looking to bring on a full-time assessor, so that's reflected in here. We have a new treasurer, a new clerk and a new treasurer. And then the accounting office is finally filling out as well with an assistant town accountant. The police and fire entrance and promotional exams are being funded within HR, which is part of administration and finance. Since we left civil service, we have been sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul in different places to pay for the different exams and different background and everything else that we do to bring someone on, and also for promotions. So we're trying to, again, represent what it costs to operate the community by carrying a number here that is reflective of what we anticipate between the two departments. Election expenses and poll worker funding is up as well, up approximately $24,000. This is just a reflection of the election calendar. Next fiscal year has a state general, state primary, and then the normal spring election here in town, as well as town meetings. So again, in speaking with our new clerk, we wanted to make sure we try to reflect that as best we can. The salary reserve is up significantly to provide flexibility for collective bargaining agreements. As I said, we have 2 years of fire that are out right now, 2 years now for, as we get into 27 for library, and DPW will be coming open. So that's all reflected in there. End of employment costs. Yeah.
Sorry, just on the salary reserve, on that number, 243,000, I looked through here, what's the assumptions that are backing that number now for 243? Where did the number come from?
So it's looking at the contracts that are open now and where we anticipate settling them.
I get that, but I mean, like, specifically.
I don't think that we would want to get into the specific percentages that we're carrying for each particular contract. It's where we reasonably believe that we would be able to land on the open contracts. And then on the ones that have 2 years, it's carrying 2 years' worth of that expense.
Okay, I guess my next question was, what was the downside exposure of DPW and fire? exceeded expectations, but if we're not gonna think about percentages, I guess you can't answer that either.
I think it would put us in a difficult bargaining situation for me to be expressing to you where we intend to land
Yeah.
prior to us even having ground rules with DPW as an example.
Okay, all right.
Are there any other questions? Okay. And then the end of employment costs for both town and school are down approximately $87,000. IT is one I want to call it as well. It's down slightly. We anticipate working with a new vendor on our managed service provider side, which we anticipate will help us not only with operations on the town side, but will result in savings over time as well. Do folks have any other questions about administration finance before I move?
Just generally, with all the change in staffing and, turnover, et cetera, in the admin and finance group, do we expect this year, 26, to be close to budget, be over? I mean, I know we use some third-party accounting services to fill the gaps, or do we expect that to compare to the actual numbers at the end of the year?
Patrick, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I can just jump in, Eric. We're managing to budget.
Can you
with
speak
all-
up?
We're managing to budget with all the changes that have occurred over the past year. We had an expected amount, for example, the accounting services that you called out, we're winding those down as
Yeah.
we're staffed up. The assistant town accountant actually started today, which is great. So we're managing
Do you
to
expect to
budget.
be close to budget at the end of the year?
That's my expectation.
Thank you.
So I have a question. On the assessing department, have we double-checked on the assessing department if we're still within a good range of being able to get an assessor?
We raised the offered number, and I think our biggest problem is that there are not a lot of people that are getting into assessing. And so, at different points, the remaining members of the Board of Assessors and others have opined as to whether or not it might be worth getting someone else that is in a semi-retired role and have two part-time, but are both very experienced. There's also opportunities there, I think, over time, but I would not budget for it in FY27 to look at a model that could be regionalized. And the examples there that I would point to for anyone that's interested is like Reading, Wakefield, Linfield share an assessor with full-time staff in each community, but the sort of lead assessor is shared among the three communities and manages the individual towns. I had a discussion with him not long after I started about what he would think would work, and, from his idea, the communities have to be very similar, both in property and uses, and so, there are a couple of towns nearby that are very similar to us in terms of highly residential, limited commercial, industrial. But any conversation about that would take too much time for us to be building the budget around a hope of being regionalized. I would love to be able to come back to you all at some point in the future and say, here's a proposal, and here's how it would impact the budget. But for now, we're carrying the salary range that we have listed as part of the department.
And I know I brought this up with you guys, but I'm still concerned as far as the fire and the police entrance exams not being in their actual budgets. And as far as it's in their budgets that they can move it around, they actually don't move it around. The town accountant, town administrator does the moving around in those line items. So there's two things here. One is, shouldn't this be a reflection of what's actually happening in those departments? And two, I just really want to point out that when we left civil service to go into non-civil service, it was made very clear to town meeting members that it's minimal, minute amount of dollars it was going to cost us to run any type of testing. And $49,500, almost $50,000 is not a minute amount of money. So this is a pretty serious expense. And I'm just wondering if it really should be sitting in HR or if it should be sitting in the appropriate funds. So I just think it's just put a thought out there, not that there has to be a decision tonight or anything.
Well, that sounds logical to me, and if we're virtually fully staffed, correct me if I'm wrong, why do we need, how does $49,000 compare to what we've spent in prior years?
Or how does it break down?
So something like promotional exams depend on the number of folks that are looking to take it. So a promotional exam at the police department, if there's 10 people that are past the years of service necessary and they all choose to take it, it's more expensive than if there's 5. And the same is true for for fire, captain, lieutenant exams, where the number of people taking the exam drives the cost. Looking at what the police department had come to us with, they anticipate a large number of employees that will all take the promotional exam at the same time. So we're trying to carry a number that can be applied to either based on what's going on year to year. And I would argue that it makes more sense and gives us more flexibility in both the police and fire side to keep it in administration and finance wherever we house it, as opposed to having 25 and 25 or 36 and 12 or whatever the number would be to split between the two. The entrance exams also, these things could be driven by outside sources, like injured on duty could result in someone leaving on disability. There could be someone that leaves to go to a lateral transfer that we're not anticipating right now, and then we need to pull a new list for police or fire. So
how does this compare to prior year? Any idea? $49,000?
The last 3 years.
Yeah, I don't have that pulled out handy.
So I know the police promotional exam is between $15,000 and $20,000 that they intend to do next year. So that's nearly, the entire budget if we were just going to split it half and half for them without getting to new employees if there's lateral transfers or if someone retires that we don't, we will get you the detail, but I know off the top of my head, because I had the conversation with Chief Casado, that it's nearly $20,000 just for the promotional exam. And so that's something that is anticipated and scheduled for next year, and we're happy to break it out for you and we can get it back to you.
That's for a contract that.
Correct. It's a contract where you have an outside person come in and do the
If we don't
assessment.
have an opening, we're holding a promotional exam,
Excuse me? I didn't hear what you said.
even if there's not.
No, the promotional, it's because of anticipated promotion opportunities with retirements that they are aware of and vacancies that exist.
And that's for every single level, like a sergeant, there'd be a promotional exam, a lieutenant,
There are different,
and then
yeah.
the captain. So
but-
these are all 3 different.
As I said, it's driven by the number of people taking the exam.
Yeah.
So I believe that is the sergeant exam, not the lieutenant exam, but I might have it flipped in my head.
Okay.
I want to get you the details to make sure I'm telling you the right thing, for sure.
I have a different question on this page,
Okay,
not on
so
that item.
I do see, I see that originally I was thinking Marilyn made a very strong point about putting it in the budget, but now I do see the flexibility available for you guys to sort of share that line based on the exams that come forward. So I don't have a problem keeping it where it is in HR, but it would be good if we just had some detail over the last 3 or 5 years.
Yep, we can provide that.
And if okay, it would also be what we anticipate next year.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
hear that
Both,
point.
both.
Yeah, yeah,
That's probably
that's
most
fine.
relevant, if they're very clear on who's
Right.
potentially retiring. And
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, the other last question is that if we're running tests, so if the fire department and the police department are both responsible for running their tests, and they're also spending overtime funds for running their tests, then I would just think that whatever it's gonna cost for this action, that it should all be clumped together. So we know the real cost of being outside of civil service.
Okay.
The overtime's still gonna be carried in the overtime number. You just want it pulled out so that when we're talking about the value of what it costs us,
Yep.
it's accurate.
Yep.
Okay. You got it
So-
different?
Well, and also so it's recognized, I mean, because if you're asking a department to take something on new, which we have asked them to do, it's important to really see, how much of their overtime is being calculated in that.
I just had a question about the, kind of the math in the last two. So when is this, it's going up 94.4% for salary reserve. What does that mean? That we have basically no salary reserve last year? I don't know.
Well, the biggest driver is that we're carrying 2 years of an open agreement for fire.
I get that part. Yeah, just the 94% increase.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean like we had,
Are we comparing it to after we reallocate the salary reserve?
Yeah.
it's probably just,
Normally, we start with the salary reserve number, and then sometimes when we settle the contract, we move it to the appropriate
right.
cost.
Yeah,
Maybe
so we-
Salary reserve was like 135 or something before, and so that's okay.
Right.
And then the end of employment is actually a negative, going down 40%?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have not transferred any funds out of salary reserve yet this year, because that would take an action of town meeting, and we haven't brought the CBAs to them.
That was Eric's point.
Yeah.
That wasn't my point.
Yeah. Okay.
What was last year's salary reserve number?
$257,000 and 618.
Oh, wait a minute, now I'm
Wait, so
confused
that's-
again.
That
So how is that a
percentage can't be right
94%
then,
increase?
right?
Not an-
That's what
it's
we're
not.
asking. Right? Is that
Unless
maybe
this
a
is the
typo?
amount it's going up and not the amount, yeah, that's the amount it's going up, approximately $243,000. There
Yep.
it is.
So it's gonna be more like 500 total.
Yes,
Right,
that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, got it, okay.
You got to the bottom of it, Sherlock.
We got there.
That's why attorneys shouldn't do math.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that was good.
Banner day.
Are there others?
No.
Okay,
Not in the nitty gritty. I mean, I feel like we're kind of going down in the depths before we talk about the overall, but so I'll just hold on that for now.
we can do whichever you want. I just meant on that slide before
Yep.
we keep going. Okay.
Go,
Go ahead.
please.
So community and economic development, it's a decrease of 2.6%. So within that is the health department, the full-time public health nurse. We're transitioning to a contract role. I've talked with the public health director, and he's provided a, tentative budget for what that could look like, and that's where we are here. This reflects a service model change, not a reduction in the public health capacity, just so it's clear. Offsetting that partially are modest salary and staffing updates in the building department and community development. Plus, I think it's the $3,000 expense for code books that are required for the building department as well.
I want to note too that the change in the health department was also brought forward to the Board of Health and the chair. It was discussed with the chair, so
Yeah.
everybody's aware. 'Cause that didn't happen last
There'll
year.
be no hate mail tomorrow, is that?
I
what you're
mean,
saying?
listen, I can't guarantee that.
So for public services, which includes facilities, DPW, cemetery, the increase is 2.3%. The notable items here are electric utilities, which are up approximately 10%. Facilities preventative maintenance, which is up, and it's an investment in the proactive upkeep to offset, and it's offset by the reductions in the extraordinary maintenance contracting, which is basically a shift by Max to move from break fix to trying to stay ahead of these things. So that's the contracted consulting, and then snow and ice is level funded, but obviously we'll have further discussions about that throughout the rest of this fiscal year. But we're keeping that number the same for budgeting purposes.
Do we know where snow and ice is now?
Do we want to know?
We don't.
I do want to know.
It's over budget.
Okay. How much, Patrick?
I think, I think they were looking for an order of
Yeah,
magnitude.
we authorized them to run over $100,000, so
Okay.
that's the order of magnitude and counting.
Okay.
So
You want to do something?
I do plenty of surface shoveling. Yep.
moving on to public safety. This is proposed at 9.27 million, an increase of 7.9%. The largest driver here is the ratification of the CBA for the police. Because we had budgeted at FY25 levels and FY26, this represents a catch-up year of 2 years of rate increases. The overtime budgets for both police and fire are up approximately 20%. This is based on the historical trends and our actual experience. The idea here is that we should not be paying for what I consider an operating expense with one-time funds. If we were not making these transfers on an annual basis, we would not have raised this, but we want to make sure that we are accurately representing what it costs to run and man the public safety here in town as best we can. The Lynn dispatch agreement represents an increase as well of approximately $45,000. And on the positive side, we're consolidating police and fire administrative roles into the single shared position that Diane moved to, which saves approximately $44,000. There's also firefighter step increases, which are included here and are approximately $74,000. As I mentioned, we also have the open contract with them. You want to jump in?
I don't know. Let Mary Ellen go first if she wants to tee off on it first.
All right, you chicken? I'll do it.
I'm happy to go.
Skunk at the party again. So going to the overtime budget, yes, we have historically had to add to the overtime. However, what we have also had historically is for the past 5 years, we've been significantly understaffed. And by being understaffed, we've had to put a lot of pressure on that overtime budget. The other thing that we've also done is we've renegotiated these contracts so that Manning is now in a different category, and it does give the chiefs a little bit more latitude on how Manning is being handled. I think that adding more money into the overtime budget is a mistake. I think what we should do is we should leave it level of what it was last year. If we're concerned about, hold on, I'm just gonna back up. I think we should leave it level, and I think we should spend more time with focus on management and to really see what are the real needs are, to really, really articulate and to get some real empirical data on what is needed. And from there, make a decision next year on what to do with that overtime number. I think we're just, we're premature right now. Well, that's what I have to say on overtime.
Mary Ellen, is that comment, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead.
Is that comment you just made, is that for the overtime staffing model, is it more around covering like training, sick leave, vacancies, whatever, or is it minimum safe staffing? What's behind, the comment from the historical perspective? I think you just said like, they just didn't have enough folks and that's what they were relying on the overtime.
Nick,
Can
do
I
you
ask
want to
something?
take?
You want to answer
You
my
can go.
question?
Sure, go ahead.
So, to answer that question, we've been short-staffed by many, many employees. So what you have to do is you have to have people out there.
Yeah.
You even have to have quite a bit of forced labor. You have to force police officers. I'm not sure about fire, but I know that you have to force police officers to come in on overtime. And that starts ringing up your bill when, if you're going to have a full staff or close to a full staff, you're not going to have to tax into your overtime budget as much. The other question is, from a management standpoint, how is overtime being given out? Are there times when we have situations where it doesn't have to be overtime? Are there times when the staffing should be staffed differently? I mean, are there different levers that can be used? I think that we just need a good, solid year to really understand it and get some real empirical data as to what is this overtime really needed. I think the line item for overtime on training is the same. Isn't that the same in this budget for overtime? In the budget, there's different line items for overtime. And I think for the training overtime, you can actually calculate, you can get a good number on what you're going to need for that. So then when you go to the fire is different because fire is mandated by the equipment. So you have to have X amount of people on the equipment. And I just think there has to be another level of management and some empirical data, and then at that point, make a decision.
I agree. I think it also does beg the question, like, is it cheaper to have more additional FTEs versus the overtime? $227,000, could we have another FTE?
So we did that study, Tim Dorsey did that study about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and it came out to an even number. Cinder McNerney, about 15 years ago, they did the same study, and it came out to even, whether or not to add more or to go with overtime. And at the time, I know when Senator McNerney's finance committee did it, the police department preferred having the overtime. I know when Tim did it, it was just level, and it wasn't worth adding more.
So I would just say to get back to the original question, like during the winter, fire as an example, we run there's 8 scheduled employees, but one can go on sick time,
Sure.
vacation without triggering overtime because 7 is minimum manning, to the point that Mary Ellen was making about being able to run the 2 pieces of equipment. I think there may be a difference of opinion between rank and file and management when you say the police wanted it versus, like, I think it is something that is not necessarily an expectation, but folks, believe that they, between details and overtime or whatever else, can achieve whatever level of income that they might plan to make. So I think from our standpoint, giving the tools necessary and accurately reflecting the cost is what we're trying to do. To your point, Mary Ellen, to both try to manage better, but also accurately reflect the cost and not rely on free cash, knowing that it's an expense that has repeatedly come up. The other, just the nature of both jobs, as well as one person going out IOD, can significantly mess up the entire schedule and cause a significant problem when it comes to overtime. So we're talking about sort of a quote-unquote best case where there is not a long-term significant IOD, but just what can we do to better manage the resources that we have and the time that we need. I'm sorry, Doug. Katie.
No, so I guess I'd just say, I'm sure we all love our police and our fire. And I wholeheartedly agree with Marilyn. If I understood correctly, in terms of, you said level funding, you mean level to what we did last year, or like there should be no overtime in the budget?
No, what we did last year,
What we did last year?
yeah.
You're just saying pull out the additional
Pull out-
increase.
pull out
The
the
additional
increase.
227.
Yeah, pull out the increase.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, yeah, pull out the increase.
I think at least, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Because we really are on the verge, for the first time, at least in my short tenure, being virtually fully staffed, if I understand correctly.
Right.
So I do think we need a kind of bottoms-up analysis. Really, I want to kind of, lend my support to you, Nick, working with, both the chiefs. If it even takes a little outside consulting or something in terms of optimization, how this works. Because that would pay dividends for many years if we found there's, various ways to make sure that we're covering in creative ways. If we find out that there's no other way around it, at least we really know. But just kind of putting this in here, I understand, on one level why you did it, because you want to avoid that free cash draw later. But I'd be willing to risk a little bit of that this year with, your leadership with the chiefs to really get that granular analysis clear. Because it's just been floating for years. And every year it's kind of been like, well, we have a lot of openings, so we can't really figure it out. Well, now we've got an opportunity.
I feel like philosophically I align with what Doug and Mary Ellen are saying, which is because we've been so short-staffed, even level funding overtime is an increase to them right now, because now they have full staff. So from that perspective, just having it at what it was last year should be matching it with some sort of managerial training or some, I don't know if there's a better way to be keeping time of this overtime over the year. I do understand that there may be like a 3 to 6 month period of time where like we're getting into that, and that may create some overage, but that would be de minimis compared to what we are typically doing. So I would possibly consider a small percentage of increase based on just that philosophy, rather than, taking the entirety of the 227 and putting it in their budget. I do agree, though, like the rhetoric has to be made to the chiefs and to, file and rank that we cannot be funding overtime through free cash. We don't have that luxury anymore. It doesn't make financial sense for us to be consistently doing that. It's now become a policy, and it's a bad one, and we need to correct it.
Yeah.
Right, so it becomes
Yeah,
almost like a performance, sorry,
Go
David,
ahead.
more of a performance management tool for the TA to use with the chiefs, because they are now more directly responsible for that line item, right? Because police is now fully staffed, right? So to me, just looking at it, I mean, I'm not sure the methodology utilizing the historic trends plus 20% in this case, because last year was a significantly different staffing situation than what they're going to be looking at for next year, right? So, because they are fully staffed. So I don't know that 227 makes a whole lot of sense to me in that respect. So I wholeheartedly agree with Mary
Yeah.
Ellen here.
No,
I think too, we negotiated successfully
just
and
gonna-
closed out the police
Yeah,
contract.
it's a good time to do
Like, it's a
this.
good time for us to have that, we're at the table together. It seems like we're moving in the right direction in that house. So, like, it's not just the chiefs, it's actually the entire department agreeing that
Right.
philosophically, the town has to move in this direction. And that may
need their
see
support.
less overtime, but if you want us to keep investing in, you know, the services that they want, the increases that they want, the steps that they want, like, this is how we're gonna get there. We need to have a little bit of savings so that we can be doing that on the go forward.
Yeah, I don't need to beat the dead horse. I'll ask, I'm generally in support of what my colleagues stated. My question was really on the Lynn dispatch agreement, which is up 16%. Is that a function of capital and expenditure, capital investments that are being made in the city of Lynn? How long do we have on that agreement? And are there other opportunities where we may be able to regionalize outside of?
Set up.
Different setups that we should be looking at and not just hooking our wagon up to Lynn.
And the only other regional one that exists that I know of to answer that question, David, in this area is Middleton hosts one that has a handful of communities that sort of go north and east from there. I don't know what their capacity is or what the cost would look like, but we can certainly look into that as well, in addition to trying to close out the conversations with Lynn.
Well, one of the things that really struck me was when the chief was here, he said that, when the police chief was here, he said that 80% of the calls that come into the police department, come into the 595-1111 number, and 20% go to 911. So out of all the calls that are coming in, only 20% is going to that Lynn dispatch. And I just think we've got to really look at this a little bit differently.
Okay.
And just to make sure I'm clear on what you just said, Patrick, is like that full, basically 45,000, because we're assuming another kind of capital increase within that?
Unclear, so we're assuming that that could occur, that could recur.
Portion of that.
So the contract itself doesn't cost 45,000.
Right.
This is potentially on top of what we pay.
What's the
Am I understanding
It's
that?
That's-
a combination between, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so the $45,000 is the increase we're carrying in the operating budget, and that would be, that's based
On top.
off of, you know, what we had this year for an assessment, which included money towards capital improvements for the entire dispatch.
Okay.
Right, so I don't quite understand, if every year we were assuming $50,000
Increase.
increase for, then you already have that high base, and now you're saying it's gonna be not just 50,000, but like 95.
Another 50?
45, love that.
The total proposed increase is 44,000, inclusive of any like capital that needs to be in that agreement, that would be funded in this
We needed
budget.
50,000, we'd be short.
Well, what's the dollar amount on that line
No,
item?
that would be included in the $44,000 increase. Our baseline already includes 50,000.
Yeah, okay.
But we're saying it's a $44,000 increase,
Assessment, yeah.
all right?
Mhm.
But what is that line item? What is the, it's
328,000.
328?
28.
Yep.
It's a lot of money.
And I don't want to get like too lost in the number, because obviously this agreement is upcoming and has to be
course,
negotiated,
yeah.
and that'll
Yeah.
come before you all.
Negotiated, yeah. All right.
But I think you've given us clear direction, not only to look at this, but
Right.
understand what its usefulness is, versed by the state on an annual basis. That is benefits that are given to veterans who qualify and need that support. Library step increases here. Again, we have an open contract, but this represents the, anticipated step increases that we have, and then senior center longevity and COLA increases represent a very minimal increase, as you can see here.
Can you just talk on that, the senior increase there, because it's very minimal and it's a little bit deceiving. It's really higher than that, but we have a retirement coming up.
Right, so we have a planned retirement coming. Right now, we have, I know, at least one employee who's interested, in addition to the fact that we'll be posting it. So this sort of represents where we are based on those conversations we had. There was discussion about actually adding an FTE there that was something in my recommended budget I did not include, an administrative role, because we were working very hard to limit or eliminate expansion where possible. Is there a specific dollar number that you think we're missing there?
No, it says the increase is 1.1%, and it's only 1.1% because
Of the retirement.
somebody's retiring, it's really higher than that, right?
Well, if Heidi were staying, it would be higher, but
Right.
since she isn't, the staffing there is primarily part-time.
Right.
And volunteer, so that is the increase to those that will be remaining as of the beginning of FY '27.
Right.
The role going away?
That's the dollar,
No.
that's the dollar increase, that's the dollar increase, not the percentage increase.
Yeah, but if we're going to replace with somebody else, I'm not sure I.
We're carrying her salary.
Yeah.
So not an
Right.
increase to her salary. So is that,
Yeah, I just don't want people to look at this and say, what, seniors are only getting 1%? It's just the budget is only having to go up 1%.
okay. Education, briefly, the school committee requested the approximately 1.3 million increase. Notably, no additional funding is proposed for the utility reserve. I just wanted to highlight that since we talked about it quite a bit. And then the Essex Tech assessment is showing an increase of approximately 31% right now. That is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, very much still up in the air based on how many students end up enrolling in this freshman class, incoming freshman class.
Well, this is from last year's, right?
Yeah.
So next year's would be fluid.
Right.
Yes.
So FY '27,
Yes.
correct. And so
We could change. We don't know who's,
we know there's the opportunity for more people to be going. We don't know how many will actually enroll. And we talked about that, how the lottery had changed
Right.
to eliminate the interview process and a number of other things that,
So let's talk a little bit about how this used to go, right? So in years, last year or prior to this, it's now a lottery, right?
Yeah.
It used to be anybody, any child interested would go through a series of interviews, the whole process. So, you could have kids interviewing and applying, but not necessarily have any interest in going, right? So they've totally changed that now, and
Yeah.
it's entirely.
it
by
does,
lottery.
your grades, your attendance, all those things used to be sort
Used
of
to be
like
factors. Now,
major factors, your interview. Now they don't even interview. It's a complete lottery system.
and,
Siblings
And your
included.
grades don't matter?
no.
Nope.
Wow.
Yep.
And that's primarily because it could be subjective, it could be, your answers and interviews and such would be used against you potentially, right? So maybe discriminatory in nature, so they went to this new model where it's entirely by picking a lottery number, right, where they're trying this for this year. But we had, I think, requested a lower number.
Yes.
As low as possible, so it wouldn't affect us budgetarily, but
But the
They didn't
cities
seem to
argued the
care.
same thing, and
Right,
It's
the
a-
bigger cities argued.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah,
it's a proportional school committee.
yep.
And so I've talked to other TAs who are also concerned and looking at it. I'm sure Jason's
Yeah.
talked to other superintendents that are concerned and looking at it. That's sort of our baseline, so it's if we have 28 attendee, or 28 applicants and they all want to go there, they can all get in.
right.
But we might have 32 applicants and only 14 want to go there, in which case those 14 would get, it doesn't mean that they're going to get 28 students out of our school system, but
Right.
that is the minimum. But alternatively, it could be if there's 35 applicants and other communities don't hit their number,
Right.
that they come back in, they go back around in the pool of people that could not get in at their minimum number in each community, as I understand that stuff.
Yeah, and what they
Tara said.
did not do in the past, not to bore you with this, but they used to, if say you had 30 Swampscott kids apply and only 20 got in, they would just go back to the pool at large with everybody. Now they're going back to the Swampscott kids. If they're not interested, then they go
Right,
back to the pool.
right.
Right.
So there's a floor and a ceiling,
Right.
basically.
And so
you're-
you could be affected by other towns.
Yeah.
There's no
Absolutely.
ceiling.
There's no ceiling, but
There's
they're-
only a
28
floor.
is our ceiling, no?
Oh, yeah, number of applicants is.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
No, so it's not 28, it's the number of applicants from the district. The floor is 28 acceptances.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you now, or no?
No, so if we have 50 people apply,
50 freshmen, potential freshmen?
yeah, then 50 kids could end up going?
It is
Depending on
unlikely,
other-
but
yeah.
I mean,
within the
there's a
realm of
shot,
possible.
depending
yes.
on what
Okay, sorry, I
neighboring towns.
I misunderstood that the 28 was a ceiling,
Yeah.
that there's a minimum, okay, got it.
What about the transportation number? Does that,
It's built into the assessment, I think, if I read that correctly.
And we only pay for who goes, correct? from our district, like, say 10 kids go.
If 10 kids go, that's.
That's
what the
all we're
number-
paying for. We're not
Yes.
paying for 20 or 28
Right.
or whatever the number is.
And if less than our seats go, so say 10 kids go out of the 28, it's not like we're paying the difference. That goes to the, if our kids don't go and a Peabody kid goes, Peabody pays.
Right.
Because that was my number one concern, actually,
Yeah,
when I
of
went
course,
there, that
yeah.
are we paying for the minimum seats no matter what?
Right.
That's not the case.
Okay.
So that was part of the argument, too.
So then, while we're on this page, just for everyone's benefit, at least hopefully it's for everyone's benefit, I just looked back in the budget summary you had, just, so since the headline number is 4.3%. And then the subcategories, the biggest ones that move are admin and school facilities, right? But in your detail here, you kind of, you spell out what's driving that, right? And
That's
so.
from the school budget presentation.
From the school budget, sorry. So on the admin, even though it says it's an 18% increase, basically, if I'm reading this right, there's no discretion, basically, in that, in the sense that it's all driven by lane changes and salary increases that are already baked. Is that a correct reading of what I'm seeing here?
I'm not sure, but
Well, it says administrative cost center, percent increase, because you look at it, you say, whoa, 18%, wow, what's going, is driven by projected lane changes, 62% of the increase, and non-union salary increases, and then it lists all the specific, positions.
Page 9.
And I'm just trying to, I don't want to overread it, or I don't want to underread it.
yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm reading it accurately, and what I take away from it basically is like, there's no flexibility there. Is that correct?
That looks correct to me. I would need Ms. Stella here to say for sure, just in case I'm missing something, but
Okay.
that's what it looks like to me as well.
Doug, we can email you tomorrow with a specific answer to that question. It's a very good question. We'll,
That's what it looks like, but.
And then the same thing kind of on the facilities. Again, that was 6.75% increase, but it seems to say that this is really driven by a gas supply contract and an electric supply contract.
Yes.
And so I walk away with the indication that it's, basically, these are already set, they're fixed, there's no creativity or anything else possible here.
you're correct.
It is what it is.
You're correct. But again, we'll verify that
Yeah.
too for you.
Okay.
Jason, do we have a number on what is going to be generated from the solar and the geo,
I don't have that on me.
and, okay, so that's a question, is what is the forecast for that? And then what's the forecast for the actual cost? I mean, we know that it was 196 for those specific periods, but there's a number of months that weren't included in there.
I can
Yeah,
look
it's
into
a fair
that.
point, because if you have all this kind of going up, the whole point kind of was like, wow, once we get that solar, it's going to be coming down.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's going up
Where's that?
23% for the electric supply contract. It's kind of like, what?
Right.
And maybe both things are true.
Yeah, I
was
think
gonna say,
the cost of everything's
the
going
cost
up.
of everything's
Yeah.
But still,
up,
but
so,
still
but-
23%?
Sure, but I
And you
mean-
think that you're getting the
Well, we got
solar
solar.
working?
We
It
got
should
solar.
be,
Yeah, I mean, we should definitely understand the differential,
Is that
but,
the gross number or the, I don't know if that's a gross number, like, because the contract may go up, but we're making money off the solar.
right,
Right.
right.
Sure, how
But
should-
where is that money then?
Well,
That netted out,
it
or
could be in the admin
could be
budget.
factored in to this.
You can't tell from
You just
the
can't
Right.
tell.
level of detail.
So that would be good to just, be super clear about.
Yeah, we'll definitely, that's a great question. We'll get answers to that.
Thank you.
So another question that I have is, we have a $1.3 million increase, but the big question is, there was, according to the 9/11 meeting, you had $575,000 that was moved over into the Nahant revolving account. So is this 1.3 million minus 575?
I did not realize we were going to be answering questions tonight. We had the budget hearing on the 5th. We have a meeting with FinCom on the 12th, so I can't speak to that right now.
I think that as I understand what was proposed, this is their cost to operate the school department. And so,
Yeah, not funding, yeah.
yeah,
So it's
so,
not net of any,
That's
Correct.
so 575, right?
Yep. Good point.
so, okay. Moving on.
But I mean, I think to Mary Ellen's point, that is, it's still an open discussion.
It is.
To your point, Jason, we had the general meeting, we talked about a going forward plan to have some policies, so we wouldn't be, reacting to different levels of numbers. I'm not sure where that is, but we still haven't had a discussion about where that 575 stands today. I don't think anybody really in this group understands that. Or if we should consider, if it's still there, some discussion about using it to subsidize the general budget. I think those are the discussions we just need to have because we haven't had them yet.
I was just speaking to the slides we have in front of us tonight, but you absolutely agree with the larger point.
We will work to get that on either a joint agenda or figure out a way to have that conversation, because I don't think we have everybody at the table here to have a fruitful
Yeah.
conversation tonight.
Probably should be a joint meeting.
Yeah.
So this is just a rundown of the debt service, budgeted up 2% from FY '26. Long-term debt principal and interest are both decreasing. Principal's down 2.8, interest is down 6%, reflecting the pay down of existing debt. Short-term debt service is increasing. Principal is up 156,000 and interest is that right? Interest is up 270.
Can you explain the last two, please?
Short term?
Yes.
Funding.
So we have a short-term note that the board actually approved on Monday, and those purposes that are maturing in March of next year will be required to make a principal pay down on some of those. So that makes up the $156,000. Those are items we've been borrowing on a short-term basis for 3 years or more, and DOR requires us to start ticking down the payment just as if you had issued bonds. And short-term interest reflects new money that was issued in the note recently and a potential additional borrowing before the end of the year that will be needed for projects such as the ladder truck that are proceeding. So this number will be fine-tuned downward, I would anticipate, throughout the budget process.
I think what's throwing me again here, Patrick, so they're up 60 and 42%, meaning like just last year, we didn't do anywhere near as much of
Where's he
this?
saying?
Funding for short-term debt.
Right.
It's just a short-term versus
Right.
long-term.
Exactly.
And total debt service is only up 2% or something, I think, in total.
2%.
So I think it's just shifting between long and short-term, that Patrick's giving you that detail, but it's not a,
Yeah, we did not issue any long-term bonds this year, whereas previously we had been doing that the last couple of years, so.
Unfortunately, the pluses and minuses on the slide don't come out to be even, though.
and not uneven, it's 100,000 up or something.
It's not just simply a shifting from
No.
short to
But
long-term,
we have
in
much-
terms of the dollars.
Now, of course, we're gonna have increasing costs, that's, I mean, I think
But the short-term debt is less than the long-term debt, right? So when you look at the increase is greater because there's less money there, so,
Yeah, I get on that percentage, but even the
Okay.
dollars themselves.
Got it.
We're adding.
yep, got it.
The question I have is, so what percentage of what percentage is this in our overall budget? It's 10%?
It's under 10%. It is 9.7% of the proposed appropriated budget.
Okay. And the rating agencies it'll have a negative effect on us. We go over 10%. Is that true?
So
Your guess?
as we take on additional debt or liabilities, like if
Right.
our pension liability, went sideways, that would negatively impact our rating. Whether or not it tips the scale completely depends because they weight all different criteria, so they'd have to, that's why they review all of our different aspects financially when we meet with them, not just that, but that's one metric.
Okay, so we have to be really concerned and diligent about what we're doing with this debt number as it goes as it fluctuates around that 10% for the next 5 years, because we've got 5 years left. I think it's 5 years, am I right there? 5 years,
for what?
2030, what are we, 2031 or 2032
For
for retirement?
Pension, yeah.
31, right?
2032, I think.
32.
All right, so
I think it's 2. You're saying until then?
we've got to really be diligent of what we're doing in this pocket here, because we also have, we've got the middle school, I mean, we've got some big things we're looking at as far as debt. The middle school's one of them. It was the big one.
Yeah, I think you're making a really good point. I think we've invested a lot in our assets over the
Right.
past 5 years, primarily through borrowing.
Right,
So our debt position is higher than it had been, if you look 5 years ago, we built a whole school and we made all these other improvements that had been deferred for so long, it seems. So we've been in a mode of borrowing, but as needs are still out there and our capacity is, we're coming up to our policies, we need to look to, prioritization, one, and two, other funding sources, not just debt.
can you send us the debt schedule of when things are falling off within the next 7 years?
Yep.
And are these debt service numbers assuming what's in the capital plan?
So what's proposed in the capital plan and before FinCom now, those purposes will be borrowed for sometime next year for debt service that will come on in FY '28. Typically, that's the cadence. So that's 1 year behind. So we have the full, 30-year projection and,
So theoretically, reducing the capital plan, to do less borrowing, isn't actually going to help us in FY '27.
not for this budget. Nope.
Okay. Not sure. Oh,
Employee benefits.
I know. Just trying to,
Do you want this?
yeah, can I just work from this first?
Go ahead.
Oh, we figured that out. Okay, so on employee benefits, where are we here? The pension is up 4.1%, which is approximately $264,000. It fully funds our obligation for this year. The health insurance is the story, as I've mentioned a couple times here. We have it at 14.5%. I do not anticipate that will be the final number, especially with the plan design changes that were voted on last week. But as we put this together, we're very conservative to reflect the high end of both last year, and the guidance this year was someplace north of 13 as the high point. That will obviously come down now that they've eliminated GLP-1s. As that gets finalized, we will come back to you with more information, obviously. The enrollment table, which we cannot see up here, shows the shift in plan enrollment from January to 2025 to 26. We'll post this online as well. The most significant movement is a large migration from Health New England to Harvard Pilgrim, 24 individual and 17 family plans. The premium difference is approximately 3% for individual and 9% for the family. This contributes to the overall cost increase, and it's independent of the overall rate adjustment. One of the things that we will be looking at here, in addition, is working with an outside consultant that can help us to potentially design a plan to incentivize folks to move off of our health insurance. We would come back to you with any proposals, but that is one of our goals, to look at all potential levers. So whether it's cost share, it's an incentive if you've been on for 12, 24, 36 months, whatever it's been, that savings would be split in some way between the town and the employee with an incentive to move off. We would also look at things, other options that have worked in other communities. They work with both GIC communities and communities that are self-insured. So we have sort of a full plate of different options that we can explore with them. Step one is to scope something out with them and understand what costs look like, and that's a discussion we hope to have in the next couple of weeks. Next is state assessments.
Just
Quick
question.
Back to that for 1 second.
Yeah.
Let's just go back to, so, can we go back one slide? Just one slide.
Benefits?
Yeah. So I think our average, when I came in and chatted with you guys about this, our average increase for GIC over the past 3 or 4 years is roughly at 10%. So hopefully, even though we're estimating 14.5, I think they just voted the new rates recently.
No, they were
Or have they
originally
not voted
scheduled
on February
with the
26th or
26th.
something? Yeah.
They had pushed back plan design from the 12th to the 26th.
Okay,
which
so we're close.
Necessarily, we're sort of one meeting behind, I think,
Right.
but they haven't posted their agenda for the March meeting yet.
So hopefully at least a couple points are shaved off of that 14,
We think it will.
in hope.
I just don't
because
have a
it
number yet.
Typically is around 10. The other piece is the incentivizing of employees to get off of our health insurance, right? And that's a push that a lot of towns, cities and towns, Melrose, Danvers, they incentivize their employees to actually not take our insurance. And that's something that we've kind of lagged in thinking about, but now is the time, and I think you're going to do some investigative work
Yes.
there to see where we could potentially have some savings, because I think that would help us.
You know, I know we asked that question, when Doug and I were meeting with the past town administrator, we asked that question, and what we were told was that was looked into and that it wasn't a benefit, but I'm glad we're gonna look again. The other thing is, when we were looking at this, we talked about redesigning a plan to be more beneficial for town employees, because there are things in the plan that people don't benefit from, and yet the town is paying and the employees are paying. So I'm just wondering if the consultant should also be talking to the union leaders to find out what they're
We
looking
can
for.
include that as part of the scope.
Yeah.
I think ultimately.
that's ultimately-
That's a
Right,
public employee committee or council.
yeah,
It's a group that is made up proportionally of union representation. So it's something we could absolutely look at, but it's, it requires 50% of all union employees in the town to go along with any decision like that.
right.
So it's a high bar to clear. But
Right,
it's definitely
right.
something we would include in what we investigate and see what's possible.
And it's important to note this year with the GLP-1 elimination, that's having a significant impact on health insurance costs, right?
Correct.
So that is something that I would suspect will drive GIC costs down as it is in,
That alone could bring it
Yeah.
down a couple of points.
Was
For
that
sure.
was GLP-1 in last year?
yes.
Yes.
What about the year before?
Yes. So GLP-1s are the drugs you might be familiar, the weight loss drugs. There are Ozempic, there are Mounjaro, those of that nature that health insurance and companies are now removing their coverage. They're extremely expensive. So they're now, a lot of health plans are adjusting how they cover it and what the requirement is for coverage for their people. So it's bringing costs down when they're taking those out as covered.
It's driving losses in private insurance, never mind.
For
public
sure.
Employee insurance.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge. So hopefully that will help us.
$500 million for Blue Cross.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Schneider.
I think last year we talked about leaving GIC. Is that still on the table? And do we know if that's going to give a cost saving or not?
The contract expires at the end of June in 2027.
Okay.
It is one of the many things that we would ask our outside consultant to look at. There's costs that come with that, and we have to set up a trust to carry, anticipated expense and everything else. But it's certainly within it's within the menu of things that they offer, and we can include it in the scope in the beginning to understand what our costs are to bring them on, to look at it, incentivizing plan redesign, and certainly, what they're seeing in the marketplace about communities leaving GIC or planning to leave GIC.
And this consultant, is that part of the budget?
We did not put money in there for this because it's something that we've been looking at, like in the last couple of weeks, as we've had some discussions earlier this year with them, but we didn't have scope from them, and we're now trying to get an actual price from them. It's something that we would probably try to find money to pay for in the current fiscal year, though.
Okay.
But
Do you-
any change won't happen until FY '28,
Right.
right? But the buyout,
Well, no, buyout would not need to wait.
right, the buyout, that's
Right.
what I was getting point, yeah, that's what I was trying to get to.
And something like that would be funded by the savings. It would not be that we're looking, a portion of the savings going to the employee.
So that's a short time frame, obviously, about that, and putting together a proposal and everything for employees. We're helping, the consultant will help us structure that too?
That is the hope, yes.
Okay, so we definitely will be paying out of this year's budget.
Correct.
Yes, okay.
Is there a notice provision for the, is it auto renew? The
GIC?
contract auto renew?
GIC?
Yes.
Well, it'll auto renew if we
Yes.
don't tell them. We have to notify
Yes.
them.
Yes.
December
I was
31st.
gonna say,
We
what's the
got
notice
stuck with
provision?
that.
December 31st.
Yeah.
December
Okay.
31st.
So
Happened last time.
12/31/26 is really the date we have to monitor.
Right.
Okay.
So that's what we're working towards.
Right, we have to
a
notify them
decision
prior to that, that
solidified.
we're thinking about leaving.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I think there's no takesies backsies.
No.
No, then, because that's what happened to us. We got hit with another 3 years.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a comedian, you guys.
State assessments have dropped, as you can see. The primary driver here is a large decrease in the education assessment. It's the charter school assessment that dropped the most, and that's charter going, is that right, Jason? And
What does that actually mean?
so, Patrick, on the assessment is the charter going out, right, tuition?
Correct, yeah, it's
Okay.
Swampscott students enrolling in charter schools elsewhere.
So that just means Swampscott students don't want to go to those charter schools anymore?
They want to stay in our great
They want to
schools.
stay here?
Right, that's what I would say, is that they want to stay in district for all the programs that we have put in place.
Excellent, there we go.
Like that.
And then general government assessments are up, MBTA being the example. The other ones are like the Mosquito Control Board, MAPC, things like that. Things that the state giveth and taketh away at the same time as part of the cherry sheet.
No, we're moving on, Doug.
Excuse me?
Nothing, he's kidding.
We can't argue that one. Then getting into the enterprise fund, sewer enterprise
Pest control, Doug.
is up 4.4%. As you can see here, labor costs are actually decreasing due to staffing changes and normalization of standby pay to match the 5-year average. We've also removed some of the paving funding from this budget in anticipation of the increased Chapter 90 funding that is moving its way through legislation right now. On the cost side, Lynn Water and Sewer assessment is up 7.8, approximately $80,000. Pension contributions are up 34%, and interest repayments are up as well due to capital improvements at their plant. This does not include the indirect cost reimbursements to the general fund, which are funded through the rates as well. And those are the things that go back to cover things like accounting, HR, and other things that we provide for the enterprise fund.
Did we qualify for the loan, the
SRF?
SRF loans?
Yeah, we did get an approval for, I think, 3.28 million SRF loan
We got,
recently.
we just got that?
Yeah, we have the loan commitment.
Good.
The Water Enterprise Fund is up 3.8%. Similar to sewer, paving funding has been lowered in anticipation of Chapter 90 support. The largest cost driver is the assessment from the MWRA, which is up 7%. Pension contributions and principal repayments are both modestly increasing as well.
How are the pension contributions so different between the sewer and the water?
People?
Census driven?
Yeah, it's an actuarially determined contribution, so it's based on census and earnings, how that is allocated. So I don't have a whole lot more detail to share on that, but we can talk actuary
Yeah.
another time, perhaps.
PEG is down. This is Joe's effort to stay within the license fees that we're getting. We also have an open license with Comcast right now. In addition, just, sort of environmentally within this world, I think it's important that we think over time that this funding is slowly disappearing. So this is solely based on the cable license. So if someone is a cord cutter, does not pay for cable, uses a streaming service like YouTube TV or Fubo or whatever, but pays Comcast or Verizon for their internet, we're not collecting. The legislature has looked at it through multiple cycles. It's not something I think will move in any session just based on lobbying, but it's something that they've looked at repeatedly to see if there is an assessment that they can attach to internet service to try to make up for that. Over the longer term, there are some communities, Andover being an example, where they're taking the government of PEG and moving it into government funded somehow. And I know this is not something we're looking at right now, but it's something that we should all just keep in mind to make sure that meetings like this and other, resources that are made available so the community can connect with government are supported in a way that's meaningful. It's just one way that, out of multiple different models that communities are looking at over time to try to find ways to fund this. But, Joe's aware of where we are, and then obviously as we get the next license with Comcast, we'll have a better sense of what their capital commitments are over the life of the contract and also what they anticipate for fees. You have a question?
Yeah, I do. I know there had been legislation that was proposed on Beacon Hill regarding streaming and adding that 5% fee onto the YouTube TV, and I just wasn't sure if Joe or yourself had an update as to where that stood as of today.
I don't know where in the legislature is, but I believe this is the third session it's been raised for 6 years, 5 or 6 years, and it never makes it to a vote. So I can get the exact detail on where it is, the committee for third reading, if it's in a committee, wherever it is. But it's something that has not moved over the last few sessions.
No, understood. I just shared the concern that we're reducing small capital equipping costs by, a draconian amount, understanding that we need to live within, the budgetary constraints that we have because more people are cutting the cord. But I do share the concerns that this is an essential service and an essential need for.
I think we're lucky to have Joe, and when you look at
Absolutely.
communities, like, he's certainly engaged in a way that many public access leaders are not. The others will just sort of make sure it's on, and so I know he's thinking creatively about it. We've talked about it since when I first started, and he's connecting with other communities nearby and even down the South Shore to see what they're doing. So I think we're very lucky to have him being the one that's working on it, but, he's also very aware that his pie is shrinking year over year right now, so.
Yep.
But the long and short of it is that thankfully, he feels like he can make this work. I mean, but there's obviously a major reduction in video interns and other things, but he's willing to make this work.
He will do the best he can to make this work, yes. I think he would prefer that we are funding at a higher level, like many departments, but this is certainly one that is more significant in its changes than some others. Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. So I have this at holding a number of 15%, as you can see here. The contract is up. The contracts that have been awarded in neighboring communities are slightly frightening in their increases, and we have been working and analyzing quite a bit with the folks on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee to put together an RFP that focuses on both, an option A, for lack of a better phrase, that is continue to make sure that we get a great level of customer service like we do now and things go as they do. But also, option B is add organics and then an a la carte to say there's a lot of things we're interested in and we want to understand what pricing looks like so that a final decision can be made, anywhere on that horizon. Just as it's highlighted here, the solid waste fund is not something that's self-sustaining. That's the place that the funds are parked from selling the extra bags. So it is something that we subsidize from the general fund. We will continue to sort of update everyone as we have updates on a regular basis. This and healthcare, we would love to have both of them come in well below so that it gives us more breathing room. But I did not want to be in a situation where we're coming back to you the third week of April saying, oh my God, both of these things went entirely in the wrong direction. What are we going to do? So this is meant to represent a conservative estimate of where we would like it to land and be able to move forward.
I don't like the fact that we're hanging out a 15% rate increase for this, going into contract discussions. I think you shared various scenarios, some kind of nightmare scenarios, some other scenarios. I think we all know that there are going to be challenges in this contract, depending on what we want to do and how it gets spread out over the contract and barrels and this and that, if it's automated. But is there not a way in which we can give you guidance that helps you in negotiations to say that this is not acceptable? I mean, we haven't gotten to the punchline. This is the thing about this whole conversation. The punchline's the last slide. I mean, it's just, something's got to give in here, as far as I'm concerned, in a major way. I mean, maybe we're going to get something on health insurance. Maybe we're going to get, do something about the overtime. But this all adds up to, as far as I'm concerned, a very unacceptable bottom line for taxpayers. So I personally want to put more pressure, helpful pressure, hopefully,
Yeah.
on you
Yep.
in negotiating this contract. And we need to be creative. If there are new barrels, we don't have to pay for all of them the first year, you know, I mean, if that's what's happening to people and the big increases, it seems to me. So that's my, you know, desire, as much as that's possible.
I want to echo Doug's sentiments, and then also just ask, you know, just from the revenue perspective, are we also looking at, I mean, I know it's peanuts in the context of an $80 million budget, but I mean, are we looking at, you know, pricing for the overflow bags, the bulk item stickers? Is that something that is a discussion point of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee? Are they exploring those revenue opportunities on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, I believe that with an enterprise fund, we have to match the cost for something like the bags, whether bag plus disposal, not just the plastic bag.
Yeah.
With any fee increase. It is not something where we can be trying to drive a profit that is above and beyond the cost for the service being provided. But Eric, feel free to jump in. I think you've all spent a ton of time looking at a million options even before I got here.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So can I just say, I just want to make sure everybody on the board knows, Eric Schneider, Wayne Spritz, Kathy Milken, a number of people have been working diligently, Gino Cresta, diligently, I mean, around the clock on this RFP. It's massive, and there's so many components to it. It will drive you nuts to sit and hear it. And they have been incredibly dedicated to looking at every single part as far as what can be serviced and what can be done. And we're almost getting ready to release the RFP. So what are we looking at possibly on that release?
I mean, Wayne's literally looking at it.
Wayne's
right
looking
now.
at it right now instead of
Like,
watching,
literally, I saw
instead
him
of
before I
watching the
left town
show.
hall.
Right, so we're almost right there, and then that has to go out, but you have to remember, this contract is up the end of June. So there's a lot of stuff going on with this.
Well, that's a little bit, you know, I want to, if we all send a clear message to
Yep.
Nick about where we really need to drive this, and he has that backing as the negotiations play out over the next month,
Right,
we'll know what the actual is. And in some ways, it will be what it will be, and it'll fall basically to the bottom line in terms of additional costs. But you know, just kind of throwing up our hands and saying, you know, I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but saying 15%, there may be good reason for it. I'm not saying it was plucked out of the air, but it still feels like this is a big, big ticket here.
Well, I think we collectively asked Nick to create a budget that leveled services. And so if this is the cost of solid waste services that we have today on the go forward, which I think is what the 15%, where the 15% came from, and, no, you want to disagree? I heard you.
I don't know. I don't think we know that definitively.
Okay, so I guess then maybe we just should know that definitively, given the direction we gave for the budget, is like, is this just keeping what we have and it's gonna, this is the increase to that, or is this like
is it
Yeah.
including
placeholder?
more?
What is-
I think keeping what we have is not feasible because
Okay.
no one is doing
Great,
manual pickups anymore. So everything involves an automated pickup where the arm comes out, picks up the trash. And then there's a question on, you know, there's two components, right? There's the cost of picking stuff up and there's the cost of disposing of it.
Right.
And the less frequent you pick stuff up, the cheaper that cost is. So if you do recycling every 2 weeks,
yeah.
that would be a cost saving, right? If you
I
do-
actually mean like, go one step back, like,
Yeah.
more where the direction you were going. Our trash gets picked up X number of times,
Yeah.
regardless of how it's picked up. Our recycling gets picked up X number of times, regardless of how it's picked up. Okay, now you guys have to get into the nitty-gritty, because we can't do it the way we've been doing it, because nobody does it that way. So
Right.
that's an increase. Even if we level set our service, there's an increase because we have to buy barrels, because that's the only way we're gonna continue to be doing potentially what we're doing if nobody's doing
Well, I
it.
think even the cost of doing it, like automated, is
Yep.
higher than what we're currently paying.
Okay, so there's an
But
increase no
everything's
matter
gone up.
what. So then is there room, and this is what you all have been doing, right? Like, what could fall off? Is there something that could
So
fall off?
the-
Is there something?
The
that-
simplest is recycling.
Yep.
But I think what we had talked about as a group was asking for a price for what we do now.
Right.
Right.
And then once we have that harder number.
Yep.
To say, okay, what is the impact if we go every other week? What is the impact if the barrel is this size for recycling
The
versus
a la
that
carte
size for
service.
recycling?
Yeah.
Right.
We are starting at the idea of level service other
Yep.
than manual.
Yeah.
And saying,
Yep.
we want it to disappear at the same frequency just as often, and if not more often, with better customer service. And once you give us that, if it is something that we cannot manage, then we would look at and say, size of the recycling barrel, frequency of recycling. Those are the types of things within the continuing standard service that there's some flexibility. But, beyond that, it's basically like automated is avoiding the cost of manual. Manual's more expensive than automated, but automated's more expensive than what we have now because the
Right.
contract's 10 years old, basically.
Yep.
And anyone who's doing manual now is carrying higher insurance costs, and they're not one of the ones that do it at scale, so we expose ourselves to quite a bit of risk.
So I think what's difficult about this, though, is the timing of this, right? So we're still at the point where we're just getting ready to release an RFP, right? We're in March, right? So to Doug's point, this 15% that we're just kind of plucking here, right? How real is that number? How logical is that, right?
Other communities have had higher numbers.
Right.
However, they, in some cases, have included the cost of the barrels all in the first year. If we,
They
and
didn't
we've,
have one size barrels to begin with, or?
but the thing, everyone we've spoken to, we said, there'll be different size barrels. They'll standard recycling and standard trash. We have the standard trash that is smaller than what many of them would normally be doing if they were starting from scratch. And they said that, as long as, trash day, they're all the same, we're good. Recycling might be, if you go every other week, it's a different size than we would have otherwise planned, that type of thing. It's got to be standard. So in that case, we as a community have a portion of the capital cost already laid out.
Right.
Because we have the barrels. They're getting to the end of the useful life within this contract, so it's something that, the repairs haven't been overwhelming, and it's something that I think it was either Wayne or you, Eric, that had mentioned at one of the meetings, like, it's just something we have to keep in mind in the out years of the contract as we think about what's going on. We're not looking to replace what we have for the barrels that we have. It's,
Right.
in addition, there'll be a capital expense of some sort,
Right.
whether it's included in the contract or we pay it, so that we own it.
To Daniel's
to
point
my
about
point,
timing,
right.
I think we'll actually, this isn't like a 4-month process. I didn't get the sense. right?
No.
Yeah, so the trash contracts are excluded from 30B, so
Right.
we've had conversations with, or not we, but
Individual
Nick and
vendors.
Nick and
And Wayne.
Gino had
Right,
conversations
he's met
with
with a
different
couple already,
haulers.
yeah.
And there's been some back and forth and
Right.
information exchange. So
Right.
in terms of what they're looking for, what we're looking for,
Right.
yeah.
It just worries me that we're already at March and we're, it's kind of like still hanging out there that we haven't even begun to have these conversations.
No, but it
Like-
sounds like.
No, 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 you didn't let me finish
Sorry.
before I even finish my statement. We haven't been able to solicit any feedback from any resident about what this potential new program would look like, right? So if we're scaling back services, we're doing recycling every 2 weeks, we're not, maybe we're charging more for blue bags. That's all stuff that needs to get out there and get digested by everybody, right? And I just feel like we're at March already, and we're talking about a budget where we really, the minutia of it hasn't really been decided yet. And we really haven't had a chance to, I don't know any of the specifics of it, never mind let the general public know what they're going to be looking at. I don't want to get us into the position we were in when we rolled out these tiny
Yes, let's-
barrels how many years ago, right? That people
Yeah,
were
I mean,
surprised to
this-
say, okay, look at what I have to do now,
Yeah,
right?
I think Danielle makes a good point. Solid waste is already a sore subject.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, people are still talking about the size of their barrels.
Yeah.
It's like, we can't
I
get,
love my barrel.
I love that you love it,
Me too, Doug.
but people are still talking about it, whether they love it or they hate it. We'll just say that.
Right.
So I do think that, given that there's a little bit of a scar, we do need some runway to smooth some of this conversation about as we get to it.
One of the conversations we've had with the three biggest was that if we were going to make a change on something like recycling, it would not be on July 1st.
Great.
It would either
Okay.
be partway through the year, or maybe even year 2.
Okay,
And I
great.
think 2 of them had experience with communities north of Boston where they signed a 5-year or 3-year contract with multiple renewals, and they didn't do it in year 1. So the total cost of the contract, which is not what we're talking about in this budget, but the total cost, they sort of managed it over time so that there could be socialization, discussion, talk about the
Great.
plan. and then roll it out, not on July 1st, but at a future date, no later than sort of the end of year one, beginning of year two, but at some point in that window. So I think that gets to many of the issues you raised, it doesn't address them all.
Right.
But even on their side, they recognize that's something that, you know, you don't want to rip the Band-Aid off and change your behavior like that quickly.
Right, and you want to understand, you know, the à la carte options, right? And how much difference it's going to make if we do recycling every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, what that is going to look like to both the resident in terms of what they're going to go through and how it's going to affect our bottom line. So all those pieces are kind of question marks to me.
We're not talking about every 4 weeks.
Yeah. Whatever it might be.
I
Blue bags,
just
green
wanna make
bags,
sure-
$25 blue
Phone
bags.
lines
I want to make sure that
Yeah.
wasn't clipped and
No,
misunderstood.
no, but
Just so you know, for almost the past year, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee has been discussing this in public too. So it's been a lot of conversations around this.
Well, I'm going to guarantee you, a lot of residents probably have no idea what's been discussed, because who's watching that, right? If they watch us,
They're
we're
missing-
lucky,
they're missing
right?
great
Of course they are, but and once
Trash
they
talk,
see
as
the new
we
barrel or
say.
whatever we roll out, they're going to say, well, what did
We
you
had
do?
no
and why
idea.
is this? Right.
Even though we've been talking
So
about
I
it
think
ad
the more
nauseam.
we get actual, real-life scenarios out there with costs associated, the better
Well,
off
I'm going
we'll
to
be.
guess the RFP is going to be released, would you say this week?
Wayne's
gonna
reviewing it
say-
tonight, I
Wayne's
said.
World.
Let's pressure Wayne to do his
It'll be
best
out.
to get it out as soon as possible
Just
so
to be
that we
clear, Wayne
can.
is doing his best.
He
We
is.
do not need to
He
put
is.
pressure on Wayne.
He's done a
Listen.
lot of work thus far, but I just want
All
to know
the-
if these numbers are real, right? If this is like what we can really propose, to Doug's point about 15%, is that accurate? Is that really, or is it not? You know, we need, that stuff is
Yeah.
obviously the more important
So
piece.
it's, in some ways, I'm almost like, I want to reduce that number to put pressure on us to be more disciplined about pursuing creative options, right?
Yes.
Because if a number's on a page and it's 15%, then human nature is like, oh, now I'm playing within 15%, right? So I actually want us to say, no, play
It's
within
25%
8,
or whatever,
you know,
yeah.
or something.
I'm definitely
And
hearing
if
no
you-
to the 15.
What's that?
Even if you all don't pick another number, I understand the no to the 15 for sure as we enter into negotiations.
Well, it's one of the biggest levers you have here, right? So it's one of the biggest drivers of this budget, right? This solid waste contract that we haven't renegotiated in quite some time, that's gone up considerably. So it's one of those things that's going to be very impactful, right? Or the most impactful maybe for the whole budget season.
So what would be the savings, Patrick, just to make sure I'm doing the math, like if it were 8? Do you know what the,
Have that in front of me, Doug.
$900,000.
900,000,
Roughly
roughly.
900.
Yeah.
If the increase is,
but that's the
15.
total.
oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
That's
that's what I
a second
did.
level,
Okay,
second
so-
order amount that we need. to
Right,
pay for.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's,
Oh,
Patrick
you're
will
saying
get it
back
for
out the
you.
enterprise fund?
What's that?
You're saying, what is it backing out? the
Oh, actually,
enterprise?
it's the fourth bullet, isn't it? So cut the fourth bullet in half.
Oh, solid waste is not self-funded.
Cost increases,
Okay.
241.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Okay, well, not as much as I hope, but
Yeah, I mean,
something real still.
I think given the reaction we had from the last change in solid waste, that even though this is 15% feels egregious to some of us, if that's the service that the town wants to pay for, and if we're saying like, okay, the impact on the taxpayer is like, you decide you want that bigger trash barrel, or you want to buy a second trash barrel, or we're going to recycling every other week, benefits or negatives, like, this is how it's affecting your taxes, and some people are very much willing to pay for it as far as
Yes.
solid waste is concerned.
yes.
But there are also people who can't pay for it. And there
I
are also difficult decisions that
Totally
this board
understand that,
needs
and that's
to-
why
needs to
it
be able
might
to
need
make.
to be a conversation about, you
Right.
purchase a second barrel, and there's a cost there, or something like that, because there are homes that need that, and we have a lot of seniors who live in place who don't need that.
Right.
So maybe it's, something more along that lines, where you pay for double the services because you're receiving double the services.
And that, part of the discussion has been whether it's 2 barrels, if someone wants that, they can go and pay for that,
Yeah.
versus just the bags because it's the holidays, or you had a barbecue in the summer, or whatever.
Right, right.
Where you need extra, volume on a certain week. So that's, even that has been part of the discussion, but I definitely hear the feedback that we are to sharpen our pencils particularly on this and make sure as we go into negotiations, we reflect that conversation.
So what are we saying here? We want this number in half?
I don't think that, it's,
That, I mean,
without the detail, it's not fair to say that, I feel like.
I think we want to understand what the detail is as it corresponds to what the actual number will be, right? So I think we want to be able to tell people, okay, for, 2 barrels, it's going to cost you X, or this is the impact it'll have on, the budget, right? If we did it this way. If we went with recycling every 2 weeks, this is how it's, or at least for us to know,
But what
it's
I'm,
going to
he-
save us X.
what I'm hearing Doug say is, that number's too high, I want a lower number, and then, what is your lower number, and then how are you gonna work within that lower number?
Yeah, and there's two levels to it, right? There's the level of, Nick, Wayne, whoever, with the vendors.
Right.
And then, pushing that number down, whatever the options are.
Right.
And then the options, what we want to do about the options.
So out of the gate, you're saying, get that number down, and then come back to us in the finance committee later on and tell us what the levers are that we have.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you come back with an option that has 8%, or maybe even less, but it has some significant ramifications to it.
Right.
And there's a higher number, and we have to deal with it.
Right. I think we could find a contract in a number that any of us picked, but whether or not it fulfilled the goods and services that the majority of the members of the town were looking for, that's why it's unfair to say get it down to 8, because you can get something for 8, but what are you getting?
Right.
Trash barrels, 15 gallons.
I mean, you're gonna be dropping them off with Gino again, which was sort of fun.
Maybe that is an option, who knows?
So do you feel like you have guidance on what?
I feel like I have guidance, and we need to come back to you with more information, I think, is
Great.
step one.
Yes.
Perfect, Nick.
Correct.
Thank you. And thank everybody. This conversation
Yes.
has been ongoing. We're not meaning to blow it up by having any of this conversation or belittle any of the conversation that's been had. That conversation is just striking a chord with us about additional knowledge share and info to be had.
Okay. We good with this one?
Let's go to the best one.
Yep. So obviously, Doug said the punchline's at the back, but I wanted to walk through how we put together a budget that represented the services that were requested and sort of how we got there. So, looking at this and the impact on the taxpayer, based on FY '26 property values and the current tax rate shift, the proposed new levy of $68.2 million is estimated to increase the property tax rate by 87 cents per thousand to $12.87 per thousand. For the average home valued at $956,516, that translates into an annual tax increase of approximately $849, inclusive of the CPA surcharge. Commercial industrial tax rates are estimated to increase by $162 to $23.77 per thousand. I want to be clear, this is an estimate and will change. It's based on the FY '26 certified values and will be refined once the final budget is adopted and the tax rate is set in December. Any, shift decisions that are made and whether one-time funds are applied to reduce the levy. So I will stop. It looks like you have something that you would like to say, or?
Well, I think I've already said it. And I did talk with Nick and Patrick earlier, and I guess just reconfirming that this is in the realm of what the increase was last year?
Yeah, the average single-family home bill increased $860 last year.
It was higher.
Yeah.
Well, we put-
But
That's
both of those
that's
are
with
much
the
higher.
values.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is higher.
Finish
but
your sentence. What's with the values of what?
We put money,
No, the FY '26 values will go up for the FY '27 tax bill.
Correct.
So it would bring it above 8
Got it.
at some point. That's what I'm saying. It's an estimate. That once those values need to be refined before we have the final number. We're basing it off the information we have available right now.
Right.
Got it.
There's that. And then, Mary Ellen, you were saying, did we get down to that 860 with free cash?
no.
No.
This is the number before we add anything in there. We might not have anything to add in there.
But let's,
We got down to the 860 using the excess levy effectively.
Right.
Right, but we didn't use
Right.
free cash.
Okay.
but just back up. Look at what our excess levy capacity was, what it is now going into this next fiscal year. If we spend at this level, if we just said, yep, approved, let's go, we're calling for an override in 2 years.
Not like next year.
Calling for an override next year.
Next year, yeah.
Next year. So we need an override next year, and the following year, and the following year.
So we need to make difficult decisions today.
You're right.
Exactly.
So I think that's kind of one of the main things we've kind of been talking a bit about, having, you know, some kind of 5-year projection that's more than, yeah, I mean, to your point, simple math can tell you we're gonna need override, but I think we need a little more than that to understand, like, the timing of some of these revenues. That's still kind of a black hole of it, is like, when might the revenues go up from the different things that are going on in
Projects.
town? I know it's not imminent, but still, we need to know if it's in a year and a half or 5 years, like hotel and other things that we're doing. Because that'll tell us how many years. I just can't fathom standing up at town meeting and saying we need another 2.8 million and not being able to say, well, what's gonna happen next year? Because this is obviously the first question.
So I think part of that is informed, obviously, with solid waste, because we would also have the out years to understand expenses. But to your larger point, you know, there's Vinnon, there's Pine Street, Hadley, and then what may come of, you know, anything else on Humphrey.
Yep.
So we're limited all around, so I do think it leads to the idea that we start with this level service where we think we need to be, and then it is, you know, pointing us in the right direction to come back with information and the impacts for, you know, changes that get a number down that's more manageable, or that extends out any potential need for an override, or gets to that new revenue, or whatever the case may be. But I think what we tried to be tonight was responsive to the idea that we wanted to do level service, access levy capacity for that. But we're more than happy, not only with the items we discussed, but in further discussions with you all, to figure out what levers there are to lower that, maintain a level of service as best we can, and make those value judgments that you're talking about.
And project out that growth and the timing, to your point, Eric, as to when that's gonna come online. And I think that's gonna be helpful to the finance committee, to the select board, to the school committee, to the town at large, to the taxpayer.
Yeah, I'd much rather say our operating budget can't go above X, and then figure out what goods and services fit within X, than say, these are the goods and services we want, and then keep going in that direction until we can't maintain it anymore. I mean, like, we have to live within our means, but is it easier to live within your means to the as top as possible? No. Like, you want to have some wiggle room every single year. That gets harder as the wiggle room gets smaller, obviously. But I think we need to be very thoughtful on the go forward that, you know, we've been utilizing free cash quite often, and we're not going to have that luxury on the go forward. And we really need to, I mean, part of this is my fault, but I'll just say it anyways, have those policy discussions about whether the policies are long-term for the next 5 years, whether we can actually live within the policies that we have set for ourselves. We could at the past 5 years, but can we on the go forward?
I'm totally glad you brought up policies.
Great, I knew you would be.
So one I want to talk about is the 90% assumption on local receipts. Patrick, do you happen to have available kind of what either, have we come in at 90% each year? Or is that just very, very conservative budgeting, and then we're just forcing a free cash at the end of the year because we usually come in within 98 to 102% of what we really project?
So generally, we're building revenue estimates that are conservative so that we should be meeting or exceeding them at the end of the fiscal year. Obviously, any exceedance goes to free cash.
Right, but if you're choosing 90%, then you actually had a 100% number to begin with, right?
Correct.
And so what do we actually come in at? Do we actually come in at pretty much close to what we thought the 100% number was? Or do
Right.
we-
Generally, we'd come in at 100% or more.
Okay. So why are we doing this? I mean, I get it. I get that we don't necessarily want to maybe budget at 100%, but why are we
Projecting.
right out of the gate cutting off 10%?
Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's guidance from the Department of Revenue and
Right.
other like
Is it
statutes.
required?
I don't know if it's required, but it's,
Recommended?
yeah, you
Recommended
know the answer, right?
I can just jump
What if it doesn't?
into
Go ahead,
my
Patrick.
experience with the Department of Revenue. At tax rate time, we have to report our revenue estimates, and if they are in excess of the 90% of the prior year actual, they'll scrutinize that more. And we could be in a position where we're using revenue estimates to build a budget, and then at tax rate time, if we can't back it up, they're gonna force us to use a lower estimate, which would increase our levy at that point in the year, after the budget's been passed. So that's a check and a balance that we have to do with them.
Trying to think about that, increase our levy.
I don't see the estimate as really as much of a problem. Well,
Well, it forces the tax rate up, kind of.
I think the gamble on the other side, I mean, the gamble on the other side and the pressure that we're gonna get from DOR, I think is much higher.
Remember, we're not setting the tax rate, we set the budget.
That's right,
So if we underrun, if we have free cash, we can use free cash to lower the tax rate.
right.
Yeah, I
So we
know,
have
not
time-
setting the tax
we have-
rate literally.
We have time in there. We have
Effectively.
June to
Not a
November.
decision is all I'm saying, it's before that, you can make that correction with free cash. The following set taxes.
And if you don't have excess levy, if it comes time to when you set the tax rate and you overestimated your receipts, and then you don't have levied a tax rate, then you have to
Lay people off.
lay people off and
Shut
redo a
down
budget in
programs.
the middle of the year.
Okay, this is sounding a little catastrophic, it's just, but, okay.
Do we know what similar towns do? Is everybody at the same mindset of 90% estimating their receipts? Anybody know? Neighboring towns, Marblehead? Well, not that we want to mirror their situation, but, you know, sorry, Marblehead.
Well, it
I mean,
sounds
do
like if
we
that's the
know what
guidance from
the
DOR,
best
that-
practices?
Yeah, I think this is in line with best practices generally. Obviously, everyone locally makes their own decisions.
Sure.
Everyone has to do things a little different.
Sure.
I'm happy to survey some neighboring communities and report back next time we look at the revenue. Just
That
to
might be
see.
helpful, just of similar population towns, right? I mean, just to get an idea, just to answer, Doug's question,
Yep.
really.
And I think, as Patrick said, I think if you know if something's going to be different, you can estimate it
Of course, yeah.
at a different
Sort of
level.
justify it to DOR.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Right. Like, we know Hadley's eventually going to happen, right? But when, right? So
Right,
it's
or,
not
but,
gonna be-
if you, I think some of it is built in so that if people aren't buying new cars, then the excise tax that you're going to
Right.
receive is going to go lower, so you can't estimate 100% on that, and sort of it's
Yep.
a line-by-line
Yep,
analysis.
But for instance, like, I know a few years ago at town meeting, we approved an increase in the local option rooms tax.
right,
So
right.
commensurate.
You knew that
with
was gonna have
We
a-
knew
a-
that
an
was going to
effect.
happen, so
Right.
I believe we raised that
Right.
estimate previously.
I mean, do we think the new restaurants in Vinton Square potentially will have an impact? When, right, when will that happen? When will we see anything?
I don't know that we would want to balance a budget on year one,
No, but
Yeah, no,
to
you
Eric's
do not,
point-
which is why you have.
with the exception of Hadley, because we would have an idea of what they're
Right.
telling us they anticipate for when that,
Well, Hadley.
for
and
occupancy
it's-
over the course of a year, we would
Right.
still undershoot, but we would not obviously pretend that that doesn't exist when we're getting the 90% of rooms tax in plan
Right.
for the year they intend to be open.
But to Eric's point of looking, are we looking 3-5 years? What are we going to look at, potentially seeing what we're, the Hawthorne, right? Well, how is that going to impact? What is that going to?
Right, and just kind of thinking about it, it's like, if this isn't our situation, but say we were 1 year away from the hotel opening,
Right.
that was going to drive an extra $1 million of
Right.
revenue to the town or whatever.
Right.
You could consider perhaps being a little more strategic with your reserves that you have and say, we're going to dip into this reserve this year because we know the hotel's going
year.
to come up
Bring on.
and we're going to put it back in.
Absolutely.
We're not there, but that's kind of why it's so important to understand when are we going to be there?
Right.
Because that helps us paint a picture for the taxpayer. How many times are we going to come back for the excess levy?
Yes.
Or when are we coming for the override? I
Absolutely.
think the sooner we start telling that to the town.
Yes.
I know we've been
right.
saying it for a while, that it's coming, we're going to be in trouble, but I think we need to know those other
Those other factors.
inflows when we make those same comments.
Right.
And I think our intention, looking 6 months from now, or less than that, is that starting in July and August, we will be talking about what everything looks like in these projections not just once in November, and again in December, and again in January or February. The goal is to have this for Patrick and I and the rest of the finance team that's coming on board. This is something we're coming to you all on a regular basis throughout the year, not only to socialize it, but also other people might have good ideas of things that we can be doing differently, as long as we're talking about it more and having an open and direct conversation about it throughout the year. The timing for this year did not lend itself to that based on when we were all getting here.
Right.
But that gets to the larger point. It's not only the 5-year, but socializing and understanding what it means as we go and as those levers move.
But we will be able to have some semblance of a strategy for the next 5 years when we present to town meeting?
Yes.
Okay, great.
For the what'd you say?
Like some semblance of a
5-year.
strategy for the 5-year projection when we're talking to town meeting?
Yes, right.
So that way we can say, like, you know, whether it's a combination of what's coming on, what's falling off, and then how long we think the doom and gloom is happening for Doug, as Doug's, you know, like how many times we're gonna take another bite of this apple.
Right.
That also should shape our judgment when we're making these choices. Like if you know, to Eric's point, if you know you're making it for one time, you might make a more risky choice. If you know you're gonna have to do this for the next 5 years, you wanna be pushing this much further along the process than some.
Right, and the select board, the select board might give different guidance to the town administrator if you see 3 years of overrides in a row as far as level service or having to start cutting deeper.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep, okay, but we kind of know, like, this isn't going to get solved this year. It's not going to get solved the year after that either. The best case maybe is Pine Street, maybe is going in FY '28. You know, like,
Pine
Hadley's,
Street isn't
Right.
bringing it, Pine Street's gonna bring in, what,
Nothing.
60,000
Right.
in
Yeah, it's-
taxes and,
exactly. Hadley's not really going to be rolling, so we know it's going to be multiple years.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what's really bugging me a lot more than last year, because now this is 2 years of this.
Right, right.
I mean, this is $1,000, basically. I mean, it's just, in this environment, I just feel like we need to be more aggressive in one way or another than it feels like we're willing to be. I talked to Nick and Patrick earlier about retirement. Okay, well, I guess the retirement numbers are already in for next year. It's locked in. So then what about getting ahead of spreading that out? Because we're in this trough. That's another way of dealing with the trough.
What other options are out there that we're not thinking of, right? What other things can we investigate? It makes you think of solid waste, right? One of the biggest drivers. At some point, we're gonna have to have a discussion about Hawthorne, right? How is that gonna play into all of this? Does it? Does it play in? What happens with that site, right?
Well, and frankly, I mean, I know we looked at all the detail, but you go back to the summary page and you see general government going up 6.6%. I know once you kind of look at all the nitty gritty, it feels like there's nothing you can do, but, I hate to say it, but with all these conversations we've had about the schools in the town, now we got the town going up 6.6%. It doesn't, I'm not saying the schools should be off the hook either, but,
Yeah. Everything's on the table, right? So everything is something we've got to look at, and we've got to look at closely. I mean, there's no two ways about it, really.
I mean, I think your point's well taken, but at the same time, when you look at that general government number, it's made up of so many little pieces that some of which are predetermined and some of which are not. So then there's even less levers to pull. This is what the school says also. Like, there's only so much that we have the ability to pull for a lever. So much of it is flexible that we don't control the flexibility, right? Like special education and retirements and we replaced almost every single department head in town hall this year. I mean, we replaced a ton of folks coming in and out or moving them from positions. And so there is a cost of that. And I think what's difficult is to come before this conversation and say that that number should be further scrutinized when we approved individual contracts and have conversations like, okay, well, each one of these is a small bite at an apple that's only so big, and eventually the apple's gone. So, I mean, yes, we have to take responsibility for owning it, but also, like, how do you manage the business of town government if you don't have good people involved? Do you want to have less employment funding? That's going to come at a cost, right? That's a service too. Trash and police and fire are not the only services we provide. We provide a lot of services in town hall. So
But I think the alignment of when that growth comes online is helpful to be able to determine if we can swallow this $849
Right.
increase this year, and what that's looking like in fiscal year '28, fiscal year '29, and fiscal year '30.
Right.
Until,
And the override next year.
yeah.
right.
So
But
the one piece I just want to add as color, this is not something that only Swampscott is struggling
Oh,
with.
of course not, no.
It's the big obligations that everyone is responsible for, and whether it's Danvers or Marblehead or Linfield or Manchester or Nahant, everyone is in a situation right now where it's not just this year, like you're saying, there's a valley that everyone is trying to navigate. So I think what you all have done over time to get to today is giving us more options right now, and gives us a little more time, and gives us the ability to have some of these hard discussions that you're talking about. But I just want to make sure that you recognize, like, the effort that you all have put into this point has given us a position where we have more flexibility than other communities do, certainly this year, even into future years. But I also think that it's important that the feedback you're giving us, Patrick and I and Jason and other department heads, we all sit down and say, are there areas that make sense that we can do something else, that do everything we can to maintain a level of service or very near it? And what can we do to lower costs? But a lot of the cuts that have been made over time mean that there's not a lot of expense left anywhere in town government, school, town, anywhere. And it very quickly becomes, it's salary, it's staff. And it doesn't mean that we can't do that. I just want to acknowledge,
We might not
you all
have
have done a
choice
really
at
good
some
job
point.
of doing everything we can to get where we are. And I want to make sure that that's acknowledged, because there's community, Danvers is a great example. They talked about it last week. Like, this is something everyone is facing. It's a very, very difficult environment.
I guess to follow up on that, I think if you look at Nick's numbers, like if we didn't have the excess levy, we would be looking at I think, $2.2 million shortfall, right?
Right.
And so we're in a position where we have to make hard choices, but we can make choices, and we don't
Luckily,
have to do
right.
an override this year.
Right.
Yeah, but.
But then, like, what do we do? Like, it's not just a this year thing, it's
No.
next
Gotta
year,
fix
and then
it.
the year after, and the year after is when we're starting looking at the middle school, which we,
Right.
you want to balance, we want that,
Right.
but how much can you ask taxpayer to do this year and then come back again and again and
Right.
again?
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Because you want that road to pass.
Right.
Right.
To be clear, the excess levy capacity is nice, but it doesn't really make a difference to the taxpayer. I mean, we just didn't
Yeah,
have to
right.
have them vote for it, we're just having town meeting vote for it. I mean, believe me, I get the flexibility it gives us, but it's not like it's free money that's sitting
No.
there that we're just using, as we all know. It's still,
It's a non-voluntary
Right.
override.
right, effectively, yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
Or forced, some would say.
We haven't felt the pain of what many towns have been feeling for years, right? Because we haven't had to have a technical override. So this is going to be, it's painful, it's shocking, right? But that doesn't mean our job ends, right? It just begins now, because now you really have to figure out how you're going to focus and drill down as much as you can. And to me, we have to, it's not so much the one FTE at town hall or, 0.5 of this. You've got to look at the bigger ticket items that are going to have an actual impact. And there aren't quite that many of those.
Right, there aren't a lot of them.
Right.
That's the problem.
So in my mind, like I said, I'm thinking solid waste. I'm thinking
Health insurance.
health insurance, right? Those are the two biggest things that we saw here tonight.
Overtime.
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 Those are things that we can control a little bit more, right?
Well, you also have to remember, we have $575,000 in a Nahant revolving account. That's cash. So.
That number has-
That was moved over, and, there's opportunity there too.
But we can't spend that money.
Just so we know, that 575, we'll get an exact number of what the balance is as of tonight.
Thank you.
It's far lower than 575. That was a snapshot in time.
Patrick, what would, do you happen to know, have any sense of like, and this is just going to be arbitrary, but to get the tax increase down to $500, do you have any idea like what we're looking at in terms of how much we'd have to cut?
I can do that. I think I presented this board with some scenarios
Yes.
of
Right.
that nature in the past,
Right.
Yes,
closer
you
to
have.
town meeting.
Yeah.
So if there was a target you wanted to peg to that metric, I could back into it and share that with everybody.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
And how much of that is, so the CPA surcharge is in there? About, is that like 100 and something,
$100.
$100 maybe, roughly?
It's 1.5% of the property taxes, you know, the computation on the increase, so it's, most of that is property tax.
On the revenue, what did you, I just don't remember off the top of my head, what did you count for the revenue on interest?
We're carrying 350,000.
And what was our interest last year?
Last year was 1,078,000.
But that's because we had,
That was 25, FY '25.
That's for FY '25. For FY '26, we budgeted 425,000.
what are we looking at? as
So
far as-
far, year to date, we're at 432.
Okay, so even though we're showing that we're sub 900 of a tax increase, that doesn't include money to be put towards it to offset it at future town, at the.
You mean to buy down the tax rate?
To buy down the
Yeah.
tax rate.
That's what
Correct.
Eric had
Correct.
said
Without that.
earlier, yeah.
So that's important.
So I guess maybe two scenarios would be, you know, if anyone else has another number they want to throw out, you know, how much will we need to cut to get down to a $500 tax increase? And then if we use $1 million of free cash again, to, as we've kind of done in various years, what does that bring the tax increase to?
So we can't really do the math on what it brings down until we are at that point. It's not just $1 million off of the expense that we're showing today, because it is the FY '27 values that will be set.
I know, it's an estimate, right?
Okay,
Just like now, this is an estimate.
Right.
Yeah.
and, go ahead.
I think what was helpful in the past is like you would say like, okay, for every $100 we decrease the taxes by, this is what we sort of had to find.
Like
And then we can just,
incremental.
incremental would be great. And then instead of just picking like a number like 500, we could just sort of work backwards from there. Like what,
Sure.
And just to be clear, this is for us to go through the exercise with department heads and others to come back to you with a proposal at 500? Like, or are you just looking for the raw number, lowering the budget by X makes it a $500 tax increase?
I
think
just want to
we're
give
looking for
some
the raw
sense
number.
of what we're after
We're not looking
here.
for the detail.
yeah, I
We're not
think
looking to
first
get
give the
into-
number and then
Right.
we'll be able to say from that number, like what is realistic in the budget for us to even ask for. I think it's hard to say like, hey, find us $1 million without knowing how much that decreases, how much is that going to impact the taxpayer? Is it
Right.
worth it to like nickel and dime services? Like what's the value to, what's the value to the taxpayer versus the value to the budget?
Okay.
You know, the biggest thing here is just not the value for this year, it's the sustainability over the next several years. I mean, we could get through this year, we get through this year, but next year it's gonna be an override, and the following year an override, and
Because we're also creating a base of
Right.
expenditure too, that we're going to be building off in the
Right.
subsequent years.
Okay, so then, like, what is the solution then? You just want to start cutting services?
well, I'm gonna,
Well-
my concern is what's the solution? You're gonna go for an override and the town is gonna tell us what the solution is. That's, I wanna stay away from that as much as we can. I think once we get some additional numbers,
Right.
we can see where we can shave, where we can make some haircuts. Maybe we'll have some good news with the insurance, good news with solid waste, I mean, we're just a little early.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a little early to be saying,
Yeah.
you know, that I think the value is, the conversation we were having about the value to the budget versus value to the taxpayer is important in the context of what you're saying, because we have to understand if it's worth the exercise. I know you're saying, of course it's worth the exercise, it's obviously worth the exercise, but I think it would be good to, for the taxpayer to understand how it actually impacts them. Because if we say like, well, let's get rid of trash, and now all of a sudden you pay your own trash. Like, what does that mean to the taxpayer? Is it worth it to go down that road? What is the value we're getting versus the value we're putting on the taxpayer? Because maybe it's not in their tax bill, but they still have to pay for trash. So that's sort of like the cost-benefit analysis that I think about. That's just one of the services that we're talking about. There are other services that we have in town hall that we could eliminate that wouldn't go to every single taxpayer. Okay, but are we there yet? Sounds like we might be, but understand what that value is that we want to try to attain, like get to.
Makes sense.
Okay.
I think that's, you listed in here, Nick, that we gave you clear direction to kind of level
Service.
Level service.
service. I guess I don't remember it that purely and simply, but regardless, to what Katie just said, I don't think Katie said it because she really wants to think about this, but I think we are at a point where we really need to think about it, and I think the way you said it was a really great one, and even in the extreme about trash and whether or not people just pay for their own if they really want it, right? But are there places where we could,
Less than level service.
less than level service?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
What does that look like?
Right, but then understanding if there is a true savings, like,
Right.
maybe
Yeah.
for some people, there will be a true savings, take trash as an example, there would be a true savings from a tax bill if they paid for their own trash, and then there would be some people who would probably be paying more than the tax
And what is the
increase would have
long-term
been.
impact, right?
Right.
So if we
What's
go
the
down that
long-term?
road, what is the long-term impact, right? How many years does that give you a reprieve, if you will, right? You know, or what position does that put you in? How much of a difference does that make, right? Is it-
And could we frame it in a way of, okay, so we're gonna make you pay for trash for 5 years because this is what we're projecting the next 5 years is gonna be. We're committing to, at the 4th year, going back to looking at trash and putting it back
Seeing if
in
it's something we
because
can
something is
revisit.
dropping off. I mean, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, but at that point, like, I think we have to be smart about that, and are people gonna be happy? No, but then you say, okay, it's this or,
Or we touch the schools, or we touch this. or
right,
something
insert
else,
whatever
you know,
sub-trash.
right, yeah.
Should we talk about capital? Or is there more?
Sure,
I mean,
that's
the
that's
last
part of
slides
this
are about the
equation.
policy detail. If it's, as I said, we can post this so people can look at it. The policies we met are pension funding, conservative revenue projections, no reliance on one-time revenues. The ones we've not met, preserving excess levy capacity, funding OPEB. And then there's a couple of yellows in there, things, I think on debt, we're getting close to the 10% as an example. I cannot read the slide in front of us again, I apologize. But we can move on, you know, this is what I was just saying, really. As I said, this was conservative revenues and a portion of the levy. These are the things that we have funded, and the ones that we have not, so.
And is there a one-time revenue source? You said preserve, don't use one-time revenue. I think you know I disagree with this, especially in a trough. I mean, do we know of like some one-time revenues that we're purposely not using because we have a principle of not using them?
Reserves and stabilization, things like that, that we are meant, in planning for it, we're meant to save for not just a trough, but really a cliff. And it will also have a negative impact on our credit rating if we were to touch them. So those are the types of things that I'm talking about, not so much, if we were
Selling
to
a
use
building.
free cash or
Yeah,
sell a
that's what I'm
building
talking
or.
Selling a building.
Selling a building.
But selling a building means we have the cash this year and next year,
Doesn't solve a long-term problem, but solves a today problem.
and it gets into an issue where you suddenly have a cliff that's an $8 million deficit as opposed to, like, towns that use one-time revenue for operating expenses are the ones that suddenly have a huge cliff that they fall off and have a massive override that's necessary just to operate.
Well, it depends on how you do it.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So as you can see here, the projected increase is above the 5-year average. The foundation for future years and budget, sorry, I can't.
The budget
Historic
is
5-year average spends and other opportunity, those are areas where we need to provide additional information to FinCom and also to the community at large so that we can better plan. This does absorb the increases to health insurance and solid waste that we anticipate, but also we would like to lower those.
Just in case you
Okay,
need
I
can read
see now. You might have a question.
No.
And I think with that, we can, yeah, this is just the SIP detail after this, which is the individual portions of the plan. I was not sure how we wanted to move through these, so we just have them, this is tiny for us.
This
Yeah,
is
it's tiny.
very
My goodness.
Where is that in the packet? Sorry.
I do not think that's at the end of it. It was.
You do not think it's at the end of it, then where
Not the
do
present-
you think it
There it
is?
is. It's
Where-
I mean, I can't see.
3/4 of the way through.
Okay,
The plan is also in the back of your budget book, very last tab.
thank you.
You have that.
Prettier there.
Capital, here it is. Okay, hold on.
Where is it?
Right, is this it? Capital,
Yep,
oh, well,
here and here.
it's easier in here. Tab on this one. It's easier.
Thank you.
Yeah, got it.
Much better view. I appreciate that, Miguel. Here, do you want to take it?
Okay.
So just looking at FY '27, have folks been able to find it yet?
This is, it's on my printer.
Okay. Have the board members been able to find it?
I think
Yes.
so. We all have a yes?
Yep.
Yes, okay.
For FY '27, you know, again, I was going to run through these, just, this is similar to what we did with the Capital Improvement Committee. For '27, we have at the DPW replaced the equipment for the sander, $650,000 for paving. We are carrying the track at Upper Jackson, and then seawall repairs, which I believe are Eisman. Patrick, is that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Eisman's.
So that's continuing the work that's been done over time. Do you all have any questions about this page? I was just going to go sort of page by page.
I have a question.
And when I say page by page, on the deck for folks that are listening at home, that's what we'll be doing page by page for you all. We have right now just Public Works, which is the top of the table in front of you all.
Did capital improvement, like, grade these in terms of criticality? Like, will the world end if we don't do these things, basically, or not?
No.
I mean, is there any degree of, like, urgency that they attach to these when they go through them?
So I think from our requests, before they go to them, we do try to sort of manage urgency along with what's available to us. They looked at it, they had questions both for the proposers, the department heads, and Patrick and myself, but there was not a discussion of, you know, the world ends with this if it happens in '27 versus '28. Do you have a particular project in mind that you wanted to discuss?
I mean, at what point do we say all? Right? Like, if we're talking about what we just talked about, at what point do we say literally everything in FY 2027, how is it not up for grabs if we can't afford to do it, right? Like, I hate to say it that way, but what can we look at here that can be eliminated, pushed back, or, you know, reconsidered?
Like, going
But I don't-
based
Yeah,
capital
I mean,
planning?
But
at what point do we say that? And have that hard, real conversation, right?
But I think it's projects that are up for appropriation and approval in 2027. It's not that they're being added to the operating budget in 2027. The impact is in 2028, right?
Well, some of them.
Well, some of
I understand
them.
your point, Eric,
Some of
but
them
some of them
certainly.
would be actually spent in '27.
Some of them haven't been spent when they were appropriated
Well,
last
that's a
year.
And
better-
even
I
if,
think
even
that's
if they're
a
not
better
spent '27, at least you're
Right.
getting on to '28 then.
They're getting on to 28.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what did we appropriate last year that we didn't spend, or that would potentially, I mean, what,
I think the point is just, I don't think cutting something from the capital budget would change the
The operating
27.
does it not change?
Right.
Yes, I think that's right. That it
Correct.
can be bonded the next year, and
Right.
So everything that we appropriated for FY '26 was spent,
No, no, we're not.
No, no,
or no?
no.
No, typically what you're authorizing for the coming fiscal year, so FY '27,
Yep,
spending will begin, and then we'll issue bonds, usually second half of the year, and the debt service becomes due in the following fiscal year.
right,
However, this is a 5-year plan, and we've been talking about long-range planning.
right.
So I'll just contextualize a little more. You know, there's big-ticket items in the out years here that we're all, you know, talking about and
Yep.
that are a thought. And when we think about, you know, items we certainly will need to borrow money for, that we
Right.
don't have a funding source for, building capacity in the out years becomes,
I mean, we
More
do
important.
have things in this budget that we cannot go without. I mean, it's gonna come in later on, but the middle school windows, we just cannot kick this can.
I mean, yeah, it could be $2 million if we.
Right,
Or
they
it
have,
could be damaged.
has to be done.
Does.
But at what point, you know, I think this came up before, if we do $2 million windows, then we're looking to renovate a middle school in 3 years, does that make fiscal sense, right? Does that project hold up, right? Do you reconsider that, knowing that you might have to do something else in 3 to 5 years to that entire building, right? All of these
If I
things that are
recall
like
correctly on that one, I
pieces
mean,
that go together.
From the, like a zero-based, one at a time up, I mean, that's one that rises to the top for me, because, and I feel like we all collectively have made a decision, and we made an investment in the design of it, and it was like truly like inhabitable for
Right.
kids, right? You know, like, so, I mean, that doesn't mean, from my perspective, that you end up with zero for 2027, but I do think in general, there's a mentality that pervades that says, oh, well, we tend to spend X million dollars every year, so that's the kitty we have to
Right.
kind of move things in, as opposed to starting with zero and saying, you know, what absolutely has to happen right now.
Right. Right.
On the
I guess I'm saying, is there anything that would help us, right? That from last year, is there anything that we didn't utilize or didn't actually fund or appropriate that would help us for this FY '27 budget?
Well, wouldn't it be that we
That we
that
appropriated
we
but didn't
borrowed it,
spend?
but we haven't spent it?
so town meeting voted authorizations in May.
Yep.
Those are out there. Spending can occur at any point once that's authorized. It's
Yeah.
not like the operating budget where it closes out in a year. And as spending comes on, we match borrowing with spending best we can. And so you can rescind authorizations via town meeting, and that frees up space in the debt forecast because we assume that ultimately, at the ultimate point, we're issuing all the debt that's been authorized. When we know that won't happen, projects get abandoned or come in under budget.
Yep.
And so there's authorization that can be rescinded. So,
You mean like the basement design?
yeah, like that was an
Yeah.
example, right? I think we actually repurposed that authorization toward a new project at last
Yeah, we
town
didn't-
meeting.
But is there anything else hanging out there that,
Well, let's get a list.
Yeah.
We have one, right?
Yeah, we can go through
we can
that.
go through
And
it.
that's something that CIC, that's on
Any,
their
any other
docket.
favorite projects of Mary Ellen's that we want to?
That was my only, right? But I do have a question, like, on the seawall repair, the Seacoast Advisory Committee, I think that's what it's called. Do we have no chance at getting, funding for something like seawall
grant?
repairs, like,
Seaport Advisory
Federal.
Council?
yeah, yeah.
There,
I thought that.
there might be an opportunity, however, I think generally it has to also drive economic development.
Yeah.
And so I understand that protecting a
Right.
beach and making sure it's available for recreation can, like, there's a stretch that we can try to make, but it's generally like,
Yep.
there's a dock that's publicly accessible, or there might be ferry service in one, at some point long in the future. So it's something we can explore for sure, and make sure that it's on the list of things that we're always keeping an eye on.
There are other grant possibilities
Right.
for that,
MVP would probably be,
yeah.
I don't know what round 2 of MVP would, if it's moving just from planning to execution or what, but that would be another one that comes to mind immediately.
You know, when I went through this budget, I'm just gonna say that, you know, the vehicles, we have $100,000 in here for facility director and DPW, and I just don't see why we need to spend, you know, $50,000 for a facility director in a Bronco or whatever it is. We have these electric cars that are at Town Hall right now. Why not just add another electric car, like a Chevy Bolt? Chevy Bolts are about like $28,000. we have vehicles, if we're trying to get a vehicle for one individual to drive around in, I think these large ticket items really need to be reduced. And another example I have is the ticket item, the vehicle for, I think it was for the fire department, where is that one?
Replace car 21.
Yeah, so for the chief's car only has 70,000 miles on it.
92,000.
No, it's,
Well, the amount.
That's the dollar amount.
the dollar amount is 92, right? So that car only has 72,000 miles on it. Just get a couple more years out of that, easy. And then, again, for the other vehicle, for the fire department, get one of these vehicles, the Chevy Bolt that we have parked outside. Again, you have one individual driving around. You don't need a large vehicle.
Right.
These are the things I think we need to really sharpen our pencils. You know, the school copy machines, I think, yep, maybe that's a good idea, but what's the difference between that versus having it in the budget? And is there a possibility we should be looking at the town and the schools together and is there a possibility of getting a better lease arrangement or a better purchase arrangement? I think that's just something to look at. I don't have an answer on that. I'm just saying, just look a little bit tighter.
I mean, if we're looking at the police department, like we're talking about fiscal year 27, we're talking about cruisers, cruiser laptops, and radar replacements. So why is are there, looks
So
like,
it's a car, and then the car has to be outfitted
With the computer
with the
stuff.
technology so that it can run as a police
Plates
car.
and
That's just one
Got it.
car?
That's
Two
two.
cars, and that's within our rotation.
Yeah, we don't, rather than having to buy 5 in 1 year, they're on a
Yeah.
rotation, so.
Right.
got it. And are those hybrid vehicles or are those electric
No,
vehicles?
I think they're not electric.
Regular
so
gas
not
powered.
electric.
They're hybrids.
No, they're going to be gas-powered for the new ones. The hybrids that they've purchased have had significant
Significant
issues.
Yep.
And currently, there's only one pursuit-rated EV. So
So we got to go to.
We're a town of 3 square miles. We need pursuit-rated vehicles.
I
I'm just asking.
Right.
I think as a practice, we would prefer that the police do, yes.
I don't want the
We
cops
can
to be
certainly talk
outrun.
to
That's-
the chief about it, but I actually suggested to him, like, we should, an EV in a town of 3 square miles could work. So if we can find money for it to help defray the cost, like, that's one that I do think it would be worthwhile. But, you know, all of the vehicles that we buy them are pursuit rated, so I don't know why we would not do it just because it was an EV as an example. You know, put them in a Chevy Bolt to be able to, other than maybe, you know, someone that's doing trainings or,
I'm sure we could make a similar case for every single item on
Yeah,
there. But at some point, somebody has to bite the bullet and say,
Step up.
we can do without X. We just have to. We could make the case for anybody having every one of these things, but that's not going to get us out of the situation we're in. It's just not. So either we're going to consider giving and taking somewhere, right? I don't even know that would help us, right? Would that 170 or 150,000, would it help us long-term? Is it going to get us out of this little pickle? Probably not. But, I mean,
But
it's
is
that
it
mindset of we have to have.
I think the place that we should really look at that on our side and bring back to you is on operation and expense. Doing that in capital improvement is literally just kicking the can down the road in almost every case, not all of them. There's certainly, if we could go through this, we could identify a want and not a need, but to just move a need out, understanding we're in a valley and understanding we need to get there, it's still an expense that we're anticipating and having to find at some point. So if we're saying we're going to move out capital expenditures and then also have more revenue that we think can keep us near level service in 3 years, like, it suddenly starts getting very expensive 3 or 4 years from now when Hadley comes online or Vinnon's complete or if there's more housing somewhere.
I would agree. I mean, I'm not saying everything on here is a need by any means, but I think we have to just be careful. This is long-term capital replacement, infrastructure type stuff. If we ignore it, we'll pay the price in
For sure.
in a few
You pay
years. So.
inflation.
For sure, but
Yeah.
what on here is,
And the
Yeah,
other
but 1
thing that
year's
came up-
not gonna, I mean,
I know, but 1 year is 1 year, and then next year, we're
Right.
facing an override next year, so what do we do
Right,
next
but
year?
guys, guess what? If you look at next year, you're looking at 12 million instead of 7.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so like,
Then you're
really, you're not
looking at
looking at anything
Right.
until fiscal year 2030, which is like around 3. So if you could push something out 3 years, maybe there's a benefit, but
Just even
So-
you're not
and
looking,
Just
Every
to,
year is more of a,
just to be realistic, and I've said this
No, but-
before, year 1 is what we're actually voting on. Year
Yeah,
2,
yeah.
we really anticipate happening. Year 3, we're getting spongy, and 4 and 5 are like aspirational.
okay, but I'm saying 2 is
So-
worse than this year. So pushing it is not helpful unless you can determine
Eliminate it
it's a
altogether,
spongy
right.
3.
Right.
So that's really like
If
the,
you're pushing them all, it is helpful.
We still have to
We
pay.
can't, here's an example, high school HVAC, all right? That's 100,000, and the next year is $1 million.
Right.
That's an important investment.
Yep.
In this building, and we need that 100,000 for design.
Right.
So to turn around and say, oh, let's just push that out, I mean, that's,
Right. That's a good example
That
of
is
one we
not-
can't push. But
right.
what is a good example of
Well,
one we
I mean, maybe you're right, but I don't know that for sure. I mean,
Okay.
you know, I mean, maybe it's just like the windows. I don't know.
Okay.
Does Max know definitively that that thing is starting to break already and we're repairing it a lot, and therefore that's where it is? That's one scenario. If that's the scenario, then I agree with you.
I mean, maybe social network upgrades at the high school. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's something that can be done in FY '29 instead of '27. Do you know what I'm saying? It's defining that stuff. Not everything is going to be something we can reconsider, but maybe there's something that can, right?
so is the ask that we're doing that legwork now, or we're sending it back to capital and we're asking them to help
thi-
us understand better? Or Nick?
I
you're
think
having
we're tasking-
conversations with capital and finance.
I think we're tasking Nick.
Social network
Yeah.
update, that's a matching grant from the federal funds, and that's over 5 years.
Okay.
And so that's, I think.
That's the
2,000
school
from the
network
town,
upgrade.
School network,
2,000
yeah.
from the feds, so
Okay,
that's another one that,
okay, so that's,
Is
you
this
know,
the one
that's
you're
good to
talking
know.
about? School
Yeah,
network
school
upgrade?
network.
That's school network.
Yes.
School network upgrades
For
are the matching
200,000.
grant.
Right, so that's another thing that's important to note.
Right.
These things, right?
Right.
It's like,
So I just-
because there are things here like
So
Burl
that's one that-
Street. We have Burl Street in here.
I'd like
Right.
to make a
Borough
comment, if
Street
I
shouldn't be
could, but I
Yeah,
mean.
please, go ahead, Eric.
Because we keep, as a reminder, we have a capital improvement committee who didn't just rubber stamp these things, they've had these discussions, so I think it's fair to push it back to them and say, look, guys, the budget's really tight.
Yeah,
Right.
Can you
that's
please
right.
take another look, rather than one-offing,
Right,
having these
exactly,
discussions here, because
exactly.
we don't know the answers individually.
Exactly.
That's my comment.
No, I totally
I
agree.
think
And I
that's-
think we first
yes.
tasked Nick with your suggestion about the operating budget. Take a look and see what you can come up with.
I think the
right?
comments across all, right? Like,
Yeah.
we don't have enough.
Yeah,
Oh, I think the school committee's here too. Like, we're saying it to you too. We don't have enough. And we all need to find places where we could unfortunately cut. We know it's not there's not a lot of wants in here. Most of this is a need. Now we have to determine what's a real need and what's maybe we can hold off this year need.
right.
Katie, I can tell you that we will definitely go back
Thank you.
and
Appreciate
take a
it.
look.
So let's just,
There is
across
one,
the
there
board
is
and
one
go
thing
into-
I just want to,
please.
the number one of our bigger, force main study and the air relief valves under our sewer fund.
Yeah.
These are really important things.
Well, the forced main study is an asterisk.
We
So
have asked.
we just don't,
We've asked the water department, DPW, to give us a very real number on what that will cost. The replacements for the air release valves, because we had one fail last year. And this is to replace them so that we're not doing emergent break fixes on them.
Right.
Of all the things, especially that.
right, okay.
Okay, so let's, we're giving you the directive to go back to the operating budget. Same with capital, maybe capital can take a look and see if there's something,
Same with school.
some moving around, some.
Or just
more balancing,
prioritize.
prioritize, you know, so that we can get an understanding of this, better understanding.
David
Jared?
suggested that we might have a group project about painting the water tower. We could just all do that together.
Some kids climb it.
Yeah.
Get me the ladder, get me the ladder.
Buy a bunch of Chevy Bolts.
I think a comment on what I heard earlier, which I think is good and it's painful, but it's probably necessary, is just changing the fiscal behavior around services. We talked about it for trash, recycling, but less than level service is what I heard.
Yep.
And I think that is a very real thing we need to be looking at, is less than level service. Citizens paying for services that they are using and that not everybody is having to suffer. We talked about it in February last year, changing the structures around permits, licenses, fees, and fines, increasing that. People that are using those services or affected by that, they are carrying that burden, and not everybody is. I think that is something we really need to look at, for sure, is how do we back out some of the services that are causing the increase, and only citizens that are using them are paying that, and that the town of Swampscott is not shouldering it holistically as a burden. That's a very difficult conversations rather, but if we're talking about really where we need to be looking, not just projects, behaviors as well too, and services, I think we gotta put that on the table.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely agree.
I agree. I think that's, behavior's not something that changes overnight. We have to just keep bringing it up and letting people face the reality of what's happening here. And to Doug's point, like, it's going to be uncomfortable, but we're coming to a point where we don't have a choice.
No, we don't.
We
definitely do
came
not.
to a point last year where we didn't have a choice.
Right.
Yeah, we were
To be honest.
diming, yeah.
And, so we're back to that same spot. So, nobody should be shocked, although I'm sure we'll find some people who are.
Of course.
All right. Did you want to?
Do you have anything else, Nick, on this
I
one?
think we talked enough
we're-
about the
Okay,
capital
no.
plan, at least, that
Sorry.
that you gave us a direction, and
Okay.
and also for the volunteer committee as well, to spend time with those.
And thank you, Capital, for doing the work, putting the plan together. Appreciate your second look with the direction from the board. So I think that's it. Let me go back to the agenda, but that was it for tonight. Well, thank goodness we separated this, guys. Because we were going to do all this last Wednesday. So, my apologies for rescheduling last Wednesday. Thank you all for being flexible, coming this evening, and thank you guys for popping online who couldn't make it in person. I had a family emergency and had to reschedule some stuff, so appreciate your flexibility in doing that. Select board comments. Does anybody have select board time?
Is that on the agenda?
It is. It's F.
Select board report.
It says select board report, so does anybody have anything they'd like to report?
No.
Okay, I have one thing. Just let me bring it up. Due to the storm on Monday, there were quite a few people. I had 3 people, citizens who reached out looking for snow help. Senior citizens, one was a veteran. And I want to commend Anthony, Colella, John and Thomas Cogliano, and Graham Moran and James Schnaffnit. Sorry, Schnaffnit? Schnaffnit, thank you. I butchered a lot of that, but
What did they do?
these community members stepped up when we needed them to. These are all kids who are at
for
the high
seniors
school,
that couldn't shovel.
and they showed up to shovel out some seniors who did not have snow angels this year, who needed help, and I just wanted to appreciate them and their parents for raising good human beings.
Great job.
Great.
That's all I have.
Thank you all.
And who do we have back there? Mr. Moretsky and who else?
Celine and Nate.
Nate Beisheim.
Nate Beisheim, Mr. Moretsky, and who?
Celine,
Celine?
And Celine. Where is Celine?
don't make her stand
Well,
up.
Thank you.
thank you very much for working again tonight and doing a great job and working in a very tight budget, you guys.
Do you guys need to, you guys need to close?
a motion to adjourn, Second.
Second.
All in favor? We are.
FinCom?
I get a motion to adjourn?
Aye.
Maybe online, say aye.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, I see.
Liz said
says aye. I hear a motion, and a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you, everyone.
Thank you guys for coming.